How do you do, everyone? My name is and this is the Bloody Disgusting Network. The succeeding show will fill you with dread. Have a good time.
My friendship to all of you precludes my involvement with any one of you. But if you wanna make love, then I do too, and I'll be right there behind you. All in the name of oh, all in the name of oh, all in the name of oh.
Greetings, constant listeners, and welcome yet again to the Losers Club, a Stephen King podcast. My name is Rockin' Randall O'Dim of Endworld, or is it All World? Here to discuss The Dark Tower, Book 6, Song of Susannah, a divisive entry in the divisive final run of Stephen King's Dark Tower saga. Last month, we began our 3-month sprint through the series' final 3 books, released in succession in 2003 and 2004, with Wolves of the Calla. It's a great episode, highly recommend. And now, the same quartet is back, navigating more than just vampires and low men, but bird-headed baby eaters and demon elementals. Okay, who is joining me? And what do you remember about the first time you read Song of Susannah? Dan, say hello. Oh, wait, Dan Caffrey, say hello.
Yeah. This is Dan Caffrey, who's actually a character I really don't remember much about every time I read it.
What'd you say, Deepino?
Aaron Deepino?
Yeah, he's got Deepinos all over the place. Deepinos are like lousy through King books.
Yeah, because the one of the villains in Insomnia is a deep. I always said Deepno though, not Deepino. But I might be saying it totally wrong.
In Francais, who took French?
Deepino.
No, I don't remember anything.
I think the question is whether we're adding a syllable or not. It's not the correct pronunciation.
Have I been just spelling his name wrong in my head the whole time? He's like such a non-character for me. I just chose him.
Clearly you love him because
I need an alliteration, and I used Dogan last time. I could have done Dan Dark Tower Caffrey, but
that was pretty
good. My first experience reading this book, I had gone through all of them leading up to it coming out. So it was, I guess Wolves of the Calla was the first one live I read. But this was a big deal because it was like, whoa, he actually fulfilled his promise. He put out, I think this, like a year later after?
7 months later.
So yeah, not even. So it was like, wow, we're going toward the finish line. And it was a bit of a slog for me. I guess I was probably 21, 22. And I remember going on a trip to Orlando to perform in this theater fringe festival. And I had it with me. And I was at our good friend Chris Acevedo's house. And everyone was watching the Royal Tenenbaums, and I was trying to finish this fucking book, and it was taking me forever. And I'm like, man, I just want to watch the Royal Tenenbaums. I'm like, I got to finish this thing. It's like the penultimate Dark Tower book.
It's so funny. You and I have a very similar story. But
you're like, I was watching Rushmore. But no, but it's funny because I have different feelings about this time around, and I think it's just because the series is finished, so I have a little bit more of appreciation for this book it's very much a transitional novel. It kind of felt a little bit like Harry Potter 6 to me in that like it's not the big epic thing that we want toward the end of it, but you can feel it gearing up for the big epic thing that we do want. So it's not perfect by any means. I definitely have some criticisms of it, but it was a much breezier read this time around. And I wonder if that's because I just know how the series ended. But yeah, it took me a long time to finish it the first time. I remember being very disappointed.
Which is so funny because it's so short comparatively.
It felt
I
this time. Wolves took me a long
experience.
time. Yeah. Anyway.
Okay, cool. Other Dan of the Dans of the Dark Tower Detour Pod, say hello and tell me. Our experiences probably aren't that different than they were with Wolves of the Calla because we were at a place where we were reading them pretty, consecutively. But do you have a good Song of Susannah story, Mr. Dan?
Well, this is Dan, the Dixie Pig Pfleegor.
That's a good one.
So anytime I can get DP for initials, whether it's Daft Punk or Dixie Pig, Dan Pfleegor is happy with it. So, this was, like I said, I read all these books back to back to back. So this was probably spring of 2005. And I do remember wanting to get to book 7 so quickly that I read this book, got it from the library, and that's all I did for about a day was read this book. So I read this in one setting. I remembered it being a lot thicker and longer, but then when I was looking at the page count this time, I was like, oh, this is actually on the shorter side. In terms of a fun experience, I I think the only thing was my girlfriend was getting mad because we had plans, and I was just like, wait, let me just finish this book. And I just kept, and she's like, put this stupid book down. And if I knew,
and then she broke up with you.
Yeah, pretty much. But if she didn't appreciate literature anyway, so
wow,
no.
She know how to read.
God bless. But yeah, it's not my favorite entry in the series, and maybe I should have went and done our planned activities instead of just reading this book so quickly.
Yeah, it's wild. I've seen people call this book a novella online, which is funny because I think they have to just be thinking comparatively, because my edition was still 408 pages. Yeah. So it's just funny.
Novella.
Yeah, I know, but I think it's like and it's funny because this did feel like a little break because Wolves of the Calla was so long, and then we're moving on to the big boy next month. Anna, say hello. Tell us. What do you recall about your experience with Song of Susannah?
This is Anna Marie Mio. And just adding good. That, it just turns into a different name, I guess. Well, like if anyone's heard my other commentary, I read all of this in one go at the end of my first year of sobriety and was just like, I want to exist in a different world right now. It was been a very hard year. So I just like shotgunned all of these. Like, I don't really have separate memories of them, like it's all just one long experience. And actually rereading them with y'all has been interesting because I think the highs are higher and the lows are lower in a way.
I think it's a good way to put it. Yeah.
Like the stuff I remember liking, I like even more. And I'm also seeing some stuff that I didn't see before that I like, but the stuff that I didn't like, I really am annoyed by now.
Yeah.
And this book is a great example of both. This book has some great stuff in it, some really nice writing, some female characters for King are like actually like pretty unique and well-rounded and avoid getting into stereotype. It's a black character that's like a black character and not just, a collection of feeling good about having a black character. And then there's like the last part, which I guess we'll just have to devote a whole like section to.
We'll get there. Maybe while eating some
it's like
some barbecue
too cute
pork.
by half, like.
Yeah,
cute
I
was
just want to slap him.
Yeah, cute is the word I thought of.
You just want to be like, stop. You're better than this. You don't have to do this.
Very excited to discuss the big elephant in the room, which is that this is the book. Obviously, I mean, if you listen to this podcast and you're 6 books into The Dark Tower, you know that we are going to spoil this book because we're here to discuss every aspect of it. And this is the book where Stephen King makes his grand debut in the world of Stephen King. And it's really, really interesting. And it's going to be fun to discuss.
It's really what?
It's something. It's something. Yeah.
I don't want to get ahead of myself. I don't think it's completely bad. I think there's a lot of good in it, but in that specific element of the story. But we'll wait. We got.
Okay.
I'm sure he'll be like the main.
We'll have like our Oxford style debate later.
Yeah, exactly.
The vote at the end.
Okay. Let's talk about the background and the history in a section we call the Derry Public Library.
Mike Hanlon, if you see.
Excuse me, sir. Do you have Prince Albert in a can? You do? Well, you better let the poor guy out.
Yeah, Mike Hanlon, that I had to go, that I had to get cleaned up. Tell him I'll see him tonight.
Get out! Last chance, told you. Get out! Excuse me, man.
Okay. Not a ton of history here. The nice thing is we got a lot of the, because, Anna, you mentioned that these books kind of bled together for you, and because it's like they are one big long book, and that's because in many ways they are. I mean, King wanted to release these all as one book, and then when they were split into 3, he's like, well, just release them all at the same time. And then if you look at the way it's written, King's not one to do cliffhangers necessarily in this kind of way. So this is just something he's doing because, well, he doesn't have an ending because there is more story. And that's how all of these books kind of are. So I remember when my wife was reading Wolves of the Calla, I was getting confused about like what was in that book and what was in Song of Susannah and what was even in Dark Tower. They were all really kind of blending together for me. So the nice thing is, there isn't a lot of individual history with this book. I do have some quotes and some stuff to talk about, but this one came out 7 months after The Wolves of the Calla. It was released on June 8th, 2004 via Grant. If you want to know more about Grant, we talk about that in the Wolves of the Calla episode. Illustrations in this one were by Darrell Anderson, or Daryl Anderson. I may be saying his name wrong, but Dan Caffrey or Pfleegor, do you guys know much about this man's work?
Pfleegor, do you? I was just going to talk about how I'm trying to think. Does he have a different illustrator every single book, or does Michael Whalen do both the first book and the last book? I think
this one. I know Anderson only did this book.
Yeah, right. And then was it Dave McKean who did the ones before this? Or I can't remember. But I was going to ask Pfleegor, like, do you know if it was intentional? Like, I don't know how much say did King have in that. Like, did he set out to have a different illustrator for each book, or
I'm not sure. You definitely have a better memory for illustrators than I do, but I just get the feeling that the more contributions, the better. I don't think he ever wanted to keep it just one visual style. I almost like the way that everything's a little bit different. It just adds to the different interpretations of like multiple worlds and stuff. But that could just be me reading too much into it.
I do think his illustrations weirdly suit this book, just because it's a little bit more impressionistic. It's a little bit more internal and surreal than some of the other ones, because so much of it takes place inside me, not in her head, but you know what I mean? There's a lot more like toe dashing or whatever. Like I think it makes sense that for the 7th book, which is a much more straightforward adventure, and Wolves of the Calla, which we talked about, was a much more straightforward adventure, they got almost this more comic book type art.
Yeah, this one reminds me more of like almost like Jacob's Ladder or something, like the poster art for that.
Oh, the movie?
Yeah. Oh, I can see that, especially in the image of Susannah. Or
I should have. I'm gonna look up Daryl.
Or even like certain like Sandman paintings, like some of that artwork.
That's what it reminded me of. And he's I'm just looking at his website right now. Yeah, maybe you look at, he's more known as like a painter than any kind of graphic novel artist or anything. I feel bad. I feel like we screwed the pooch on the illustrator for this one. Bernie writes, and I had all sorts of stuff to say about, but this guy. Wait, Randall, you never said what you were doing when the activity you were doing.
I didn't do my thing. I'll do it really quickly. Basically, I remember I was doing summer stock. Like, I was also acting, Dan. And so
shit, that's funny.
I know that was the reason I really drew that comparison, but I also was having trouble finishing it. And I remember literally thinking, this is the penultimate Dark Tower book. I should be more excited about this. And the nice thing was, the guy who was the tech director on summer stock with me was also a big King head, and he was also reading it at the same time. So I remember us talking about it like while we were doing load-ins and loadouts, and I do remember like staying in my dorm room reading it when everyone else was hanging out, because I was like, Johnny will spoil it for me if I don't finish it, because he was like, I'm gonna finish it tonight, we'll talk about it. So
he's like bullying you with it. He's like, if you don't do this, I'm gonna tell you what happens to the Dixie Pig.
Yeah, and the funny thing is, I remember, I know exactly what part I was struggling with, and we'll get there because I'm sure we'll talk about it. And it's something I think I appreciated a lot more now, because I understand a lot of it has to do with Susannah and Mia, which was the storyline I really didn't care for when I was younger, because I was like, give me the guts, give me the nasty stuff, and then get me to the Dixie Pig. It's like the fireworks factory on The Simpsons. But then I actually really appreciated the Mia stuff a lot more on this read, and that's something we're going to be talking about a lot later. So yeah, it just reminded me very similar. I don't think my friends were watching Royal Tenenbaums, but they very well could have been. We were all
you're going to miss Wildcat, bro. Get in here.
I think Mac Gerber was actually probably there, because it was one of his, one of our collective best friends. Yeah, real quick, Daryl Anderson. It seems like of all the illustrators, he has the least personal relationship with King. He was part of a collective called Braid, British art collective, but he almost looks like a by commission artist. I mean, all artists are by commission.
And I think that's part, like, I looked and there really wasn't much there, like in terms of him having worked on other King stuff. And I do like the illustrations, though. I think they're cool.
I like them,
but they don't have like as much, I don't know, say personality as like Wizard and Glass, right? Or some of the Bernie Wrights and stuff.
They're almost more, I feel like too, they're almost more settings. Like you get the road going to Stephen King's house, you get the skyscraper that they take the Black 13 into, and when we do see people, I feel like you only get the one action shot of the guy getting shot, and which is sort of a callback to Drawing of the Three. Right. But yeah, it's much more like landscapes than anything, which I don't mind. It's a cool way to break it up. And I really love the illustrations for the 7th book, much more action oriented, as we'll see soon.
Cool. All right. I got some quotes here from King. He doesn't talk about this book specifically too much, but I do have a few things here. But I also have some more general comments that he's made that I think are relevant to this discussion, where he obviously appears in this story. And we get this whole epilogue with all of his diary entries about working on it, which is kind of funny because we've litigated the history of the Dark Tower so much. All that stuff, I was like, yeah, I know. You know what I mean? Like all this stuff that's in there, when at the time I didn't know any of that, and it was really exciting. But I've been through a lot of that, history so much, especially in our archive series on the Patreon, that it's kind of old news to me now. Although there were a few fun revelations in that we can talk about more later. And then he did this great interview with Bev Vincent and Bev Vincent's Dark Tower companion. Some of the quotes I'm saving for next episode because they're more about, the larger, because this was, I believe, in 2012 when this book came out. I could be a couple years off, but so he's talking about the entirety of the Dark Tower experience and also has time to like reflect on it. So I'm saving some of those quotes for the next book, but then a few of these here I just think are relevant to the way he looks at how he built this world and where his real interests lie. So Bev asks him in the introduction to this book, he says, "One thing that has always confused me about Roland is his age. He meets up with people over the course of his travels who knew him when he was a child, like Sheb and Tull, but he talks about being 1,000 years old." King's answer: "Sheb knows him from when he came to Meges, not exactly a child, but as an adolescent. I don't know any of these things." Your guess is as good as mine, really. My assumption is that something happened to Roland after Gilead fell, and it has nothing to do with the beams, and it has to do with the beams and time getting funny, and he really has lived a more or less normal life, that it's time itself that's gone off the rails. That's all I know. The only other thing that I can say is that my concept of the book when I started, when I was very young, like 22 years old, probably mutated to something that was a little less mythic as time went by. I find that general disinterest in the mechanics behind his myth and lore to be interesting and revealing, and there's more of that. So speaking about the evolution of characters, Bev Vincent says, "You can sort of see in the early days when the stories were first published in the magazine of fantasy and science fiction how your thoughts about Martin and Walter and the Man in Black evolved." King says, "These stories all want to cohere. The Dark Tower books are always trying to get back to some kind of central myth core, but I could never define it, and I never tried to, because I'm not that kind of writer. I'm very instinctive. It's not anything that I'm really thinking of ahead of time."
I read fairy tales, Stephen. Just kidding. No, I'm not just kidding. No, I like his, but it's funny because his fantasy has always felt like that to me. And it's something like where it's like sprawling series like the Dark Tower, it works a lot better than it does for me in something like Fairy Tale or even Eyes of the Dragon. Like, I feel like because with the Dark Tower, we know there's always more coming. It almost gives him decades to figure all this out and bring it to a satisfying conclusion, where something like Fairy Tale does feel a little bit like, well, it's fantasy, so I can do whatever the fuck I want, And and like I said, so does I didn't hate Fairy Tale. I'm making it sound like I hate it or something. But anyway,
well, tune into our episode available on Patreon, patreon.com/.
I'm not a Patreon. I haven't been able to listen to it yet.
Can I jump in just with a thought on this
please.
whole, like, I don't really think it through?
Sure.
Number one, I think there's clearly like some thinking through, right? But all of us here have done creative stuff, like writing, acting, whatever. And I'm just going to guess maybe everyone here has had the experience of someone coming up to you afterwards or reading it and saying like, "I really love how you XYZ, da, 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 da." And you're like, "Oh my God, I had no idea." Mm-hmm. But you're right. That is genius. That thing that I did is totally genius. Mm-hmm. The way I tied this and this together, totally meant to do that.
Yeah. And I think a lot of it is like for King, he did map a lot out, but I think that there's a lot of little holes that maybe he didn't
but what I'm saying is like, I think that our subconscious, when we're in a creative space, we don't have to be like consciously planning all of it out for it to kind of like wind up. He talks about the stories want to cohere. I think maybe that's the best way to put it.
Yeah. And
I think they do wind up cohering a lot because not just what he's doing consciously, but the places where he's chosen to let go of it.
Agree.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
At all?
Do you mean in this book specifically or the whole series or both?
I think the whole series, although that stuff about how old Roland is funny because I think that I think it's good not to answer that question.
Yeah.
I think that's a good space to leave blank.
I agree. I think what he's responding to here there's that Simpsons bit about about where the comic book guy asked the Itchy and Scratchy voice people about how the xylophone ribs, like one makes a different sound when the same one is hit twice. You know, it's like, I think that's the stuff King's responding to, is he's like, I haven't thought through every single thing. So if you ask me about the ages, I might not have an answer to that.
Yeah,
because, yeah.
I think sometimes too, because, you know, he'll say like, unlike other authors, I don't plan this out. It's like, yeah, but sometimes if you're just writing and then you're going back and revising, it's like, maybe that's just sort of your form of outlining, you know? Like, he's like, maybe he doesn't do bullet points. He actually just writes out chapters. But I think there has to be some planning that goes into this, maybe more than he's letting on. Because I think some of this adds to the mythology that it's like, yeah, the typewriter is just, I'm this vessel that the story pours out of. And
it blows through him. It blows through him like wind, guys.
I mean, and that's like literally what we see in this book. I mean, Mel said a similar thing on the on-writing episode about like, how are we defining outlining? Because every writer outlines to an extent. Like you said, yeah, like I don't sit down and formally outline my plays, the numbers and stuff, but I am planning it out, as I'm sure you are, Randall, Anna, when you write a novel. You know, like it's. I don't know. I wonder if there are writers out there who believe that, like they are the blowing or having wind blow through them or whatever you said.
And then there's this idea that like when you're creating something, it all is there are connections in your head that you don't even necessarily consciously know about, but that emerge as you're creating because it's all your creation. I mean, that's the one thing about that end part that I do appreciate. I feel like what he's trying to say is that if it's all your creation, it all does work together because it's all coming from the same place, right? It's all like, of course it's going to cohere, even in the places that it doesn't cohere are just blank. Yeah. They're not jagged. It's just like, oh, I didn't think about that. You know? I hope I'm making sense of it.
I think you are.
It's a strength in King's writing that he thinks through a lot of it, but then some of it just sort of like dovetails in a way that feels more graceful than I think if he was thinking like point by point by point by point.
He always says the books he maps out the most are the ones he's least satisfied with. You know, he wants that magic that you're talking about, Anna, the sort of like the graceful dovetailing that almost happens despite himself. You know,
when I think about this a lot. I feel like there was a recent episode where I mentioned this, but you know, on Twitter you'll see a lot of people going like, you know, give me a horror author recommendation. It's not Stephen King. I'm sick of people talking about blah blah blah, which I get, you know, because he is like literally the most popular novelist in the world.
Richard Bachman.
Yeah, be cheeky about it. But I think, you know, we all read a lot of horror, and as much as I like a lot of other horror authors, I do think the reason that King is resonant with me is because he just does have that kind of raw humanity, even in his worst novels. And I'm reading all Peter Straub's works right now, which I like a lot, but he's someone who is very meticulous and planned out, and his narratives are so twisty, which is satisfying from an intellectual standpoint. And you know, you kind of marvel at it. You're like, wow, that murder mystery was so, you know, thought out and precise, but at the same time it results sometimes in a coldness. And I wonder if part of King's warmth and rawness and the emoting that we love about him comes from that kind of lack of planning, if that makes sense. So like, yeah, I think that makes total sense what you're saying, Anna.
And nobody in Straub novels say fuckaroo or fuckery.
I'll have to look though. I don't know, man.
It's like
I got
my least favorite part. The otherwise perfect Dreamcatcher.
Oh yeah.
I'm going to be talking about Dreamcatcher later because there's a lot of thematic and I don't know, DNA that links.
Is there virus in this? That's my question.
That's a good question. But no, I think there's a lot of like thematic connections that really course through this. Obviously, a lot of his recent work post-accident was concerned with death, and he literally kills himself in this book. So, you know, and so it's interesting.
Stephen King dead.
Yeah, I know.
The author is dead.
The author,
when we were emailing.
Oh yes, and we will talk about that.
Oh yeah, oh my gosh, I'm excited about that. All right.
Okay, Bev asked, did you always plan to include yourself in the series? King said no. But after the accident, I was thinking if I had died in that accident, it would have been like the mystery of Edwin Drood. There would have been this whole setup with no conclusion. And to me, that was kind of an awful thought, that I would not have the chance to finish what I started. I began to think, well, I am the god of these people's world. I'm sort of the oversoul that they don't know anything about. And if all things serve the beam, then I'm part of that because I've written all these books with the Dark Tower in it and everything. And I thought it was a really neat thing to do. The idea that if they saved me, then the story continued. You know, that's kind of an old idea too. The idea of saving the creator so the story continues. And that's a neat idea that I'm sure we'll be touching on a little bit more later. He also wrote the intro to Robin Firth's Dark Tower Concordance. Are any of you familiar with this?
Pfleegor, you are, right?
Yeah. I think I read it back in the day. I don't really remember anything about it, but it was a while ago if I did.
Yeah, I had it when I was younger, but my copy has disappeared into a thinny. So, which is too bad, but I do remember it being very thorough. And it's kind of a fun story. I mean, Robin Firth was Stephen King's research assistant for many years. And she basically, when he was writing these books, he said, I've got all this shit that I wrote and I don't remember half of it. I need you to sort of break it all down for me. And then she made this sort of Bible for the Dark Tower. And King just said, why don't we just release this? Because it's really good. You know, it really helped him write. And so, yeah, they just packaged it up into, you know, a fancy little thing and then released it. And it is helpful. I remember reading it when I was younger.
I should say, I think Caffrey actually gifted me that. So I know it's somewhere.
Yeah, I'm like, wow, thanks a lot.
I know.
My gift meant nothing to you.
No, I
only got
honestly
you started on the series or whatever.
No, I think one of the losers was at my house and was like, oh, can I borrow that? And just sort of, you know.
And then it disappears.
That's how it happens.
That's literally what happened with my initial, like my first edition hardcovers of Song of Susannah and Dark Tower. I think I took them into our old studio back in the day, and they are in the wind now. So
walk-ins took them.
Yeah, I've gifted.
Did anyone
them
else
to...
have like an Arrested Development thing when you were reading that? Gonna have some walk-ins. Gonna get some
yes,
walk-ins.
I literally did think about that. Okay, so this is from the Dark Tower Concordance from Stephen King's intro. Robin provided exactly what I needed and more. One day I walked into my office to discover her down on her knees, carefully sticking photographs into a huge piece of poster paper. It was, she explained, a walking tour of 2nd Avenue in New York, covering the avenue itself and all the cross streets from 40th to 66. There was the UN Plaza Hotel, which has changed its name twice since I started writing Roland's story. There was the Hammarskjöld Plaza, which did not even exist back in 1970. There was the spot where Tom and Jerry's Artistic Deli, Party Platters Our Specialty, once stood. That poster eventually went up on the wall of my writing room in Florida and was an invaluable help in writing Song of Susannah. In addition to the walking tour itself, Robin had patiently wrinkled out the history of the key 2 blocks, including the real shops and buildings I'd replaced with such fictional bits of real estate as Choo Choo Mama's and the Manhattan Restaurant of the Mind. And it was Robin who discovered that across the street from 2 Hammarskjöld Plaza, there really is a little pocket park. It's called a Peace Garden that does indeed contain a bronze turtle sculpture. Talk about life imitating art. I just thought that was kind of a neat little detail. And I feel like there was something worth reading in the whole epilogue where we're reading his diaries. Hold on, let me just bring it up. It's about how badly he wanted to finish that, which I think was, I think this is just interesting. And obviously this is, you know, fictionalized to some degree within this, but I do think it's just neat to read. He's just him talking about writing Wizard and Glass. I've already got over 200 pages and was delighted to find Roland and his friends investigating the remains of the superflu, seeing evidence of both Randall Flagg and Mother Abigail. I think Flagg may turn out to be Walter, Roland's old nemesis. His real name is Walter O'Dim, and he was just a country boy to start with. It makes perfect sense in a way. I can see now how, to a greater or lesser degree, every story I've ever written is about this story. And, you know, I don't have a problem with that. Writing this story is the one that always feels like coming home. Why does it always feel dangerous as well? Why should I be so convinced that if I'm ever found slumped over my desk, dead of a heart attack, or wiped out on my Harley, probably on Route 7, it will be while working on one of these weird westerns? I guess because I know so many people are depending on me to finish the cycle, and I want to finish it. God, yes. No Canterbury Tales or Mystery of Edwin Drood in my portfolio if I can help it. Thank you very much. And yet I always feel as if some anti-creative force is looking around for me, and that I am easier to see when I'm working on these stories. So, again, partly fictionalized, but also rooted in, I think, the kind of obsession with death that really was consuming him at this time. And again, this is something we've been talking about since Dreamcatcher, Black House, and From a Buick 8 specifically. All these books are very, very consumed with death. And it's so wild that in this book, the almost apotheosis of all of it is him, you know, teasing and playing with the idea of what if I died on that road, which is something he's been obsessed with, you know, obviously since that happened.
I mean, and he did almost die on that. I mean,
I know. Yeah.
It's an earned obsession.
Oh, absolutely.
And
It's fascinating to watch play out. I mean, that's the thing about King's works is they're so deeply personal, and this stuff really does bleed through.
It's interesting because obviously he's always written about death, right? He's a horror writer, but he almost feels like he's nihilistically challenging death a little bit, the way that is in From a Bugate, and that like it's almost like he's confronting it by having this gleeful sense of humor about it, but there seems to be real pain beneath that too. Like it's not just like, oh haha, he's joking about his demise. It's like, no, this feels really raw to him still. Because it's almost written like a joke in this, but when you do think about it, it feels a little sad that I don't know, not that like it's a bad story move, I don't think. Well, I won't say anything about the next book, but it feels a little. I mean, it's like the classic thing of the comedian, right? Telling the joke to mask his pain a little bit is how it comes off to me.
Yeah, the Pagliacci. It's I think the June 19th, 1990. Yeah, but the June 19th is such a weird detail that just, the fact that he actually was hit on June 19th, 1999. And that's where it does sort of connect this, like, I mean, obviously he was writing this after 1999, but that number 19 had already been pretty firmly established. So when he actually, regained consciousness in the hospital, he must have been like, maybe there is something coming to get me, right? Because this is just so coincidental.
High weirdness. We talked about it last time. Okay, let's talk about the critics' thoughts on this. The thing is, I will say also, it's hard to find reviews of a book like Song of Susannah, not just because so many pages and reviews and online detritus and newspaper articles are lost in this online world, but also because I don't think this was a book that, this is the 6th book in a series. And even though it is Stephen King, it's not going to get the same amount of coverage, I think, especially at that time. These books weren't as, the juggernauts that they are now. Okay. New York Times, dauntingly overstuffed and complex. The hokey illustrations by Darrell Anderson don't help untangle things.
Mean.
King's prose, sometimes indulgent, crystallizes whenever he leaves the netherworld. This suggests that his favorite fantasy is not the Byzantine cosmology of another world, but a skewed version of our own. I thought that was insightful, if a touch harsh. But the New York Times also wrote a separate piece that was kind of about the Dark Tower in full. It came out, I believe, around the time of the 7th book, but there is kind of discussion of the 6th book as well. But I did think it was interesting to note. They say the whole project eludes description. It's a double black diamond ski run for fantasy nerds. It's easy to understand why these books have generally been among King's most neglected. At times, the series feels like a dumping ground for his wackier notions, a talking monorail that likes riddles, and for the further explication of ideas from his previous books, The Superflu from The Stand. The world of Dark Tower is insane and lawless. Roland and his friends find doors on the beach that transport them into our world. They grow new legs. They learn how to throw decapitating dinner plates. They also, alas, meet Stephen King. So that was the general vibe, was, I think, in a lot of stuff that I read, was this is almost too weird for comfort. I also want to note that Esquire ranked all of Stephen King's books when there were 75 books out. I'm not sure when it was published. I didn't look. But I thought it was interesting that they put Song of Susannah 62 out of 75. Do you guys think that's high or low? Anna?
I don't know. I mean, like...
How do you rank this against the other ones, right?
Yeah, like I said, I feel like the Dark Tower books, it's really hard to sort of... They all kind of need to be judged as part of a whole.
I agree.
I think he does a terrible job of splitting them up, to be honest. Like,
ooh, I want to talk about that.
Like, they don't, like, as coming back to them, especially like having a, not reading them like all in one big gulp. I'm like, why did this end here? Why? Like, why didn't we end the Calla when we left the Calla? You know what I mean? Like, it's just, we stick around in the Calla for a little while longer, which is fine. I like the Calla, but it just seems like a weird cutting off place. I don't know. Like, you all know that my affection for his truly wacky, weird stuff, like Dreamcatcher and Tommyknockers. And is this a better novel than those? I mean,
good question.
It's better written, but that's not what I always love about Stephen King. You know, like it isn't as gonzo, actually. Like I think sometimes people think the Dark Tower stuff, some of it is really gonzo, and that I admire. But like Dreamcatcher and Tommyknockers are just like, talk about high weirdness. Like he's just like exploring the edges of his own mind. And here he's pretty sane. You know?
Sure.
I think tonally, especially given that it's only like 24 hours.
Yeah.
So it
all
feels
takes
like
place
kind of
in 24 hours.
It's like a mad dash, but this of all of them, like I think Caffrey said part 2 is like getting the band back together kind of thing. And I think this is like a chase sequence. It just seems like constantly it's like, here's the objective, here's where we got to go. Here's this, here's where we got to go. Because every group of characters is just like rushing towards some geography. And I think given the 24 hours, it just makes everything feel like it's very high paced. Caffrey, when you alluded to the Harry Potter series, I think this is the book too for me that kind of blends into the other ones. I didn't remember distinctive points from this book pretty much other than the Dixie Pig. Like when I was thinking back to my first read through, I was like, that's the only thing I really remember sticking out a lot. The rest of it is like, I know they go from here to there to here to there.
Yeah, it's very, I mean, it's like literal table setting in this book, right? And it's funny because the biggest event, right, is Mia's pregnancy. And we see the pregnancy, but we don't see the product of it really at the end. I mean, if you think about Callahan and Jake and Oi's mission, it really does just feel like hand wringing, right? Until we get it almost felt like he was looking for stuff to do. And the King element of it feels a little bit more substantial just because it's Stephen fucking King appearing in his own work. But even plot wise, it's important later on, but it's not like there are a ton of big actual story moves in this book. Like it really does feel like it's just getting ready for the 7th book. And I would argue some of the stuff like putting Black 13 on, you know, where 9/11.
He loves to muse on what caused 9/11.
It's just really funny also because like, did we?
Does he?
It's like no, he does. It's just funny because it's like, did we
meld Black 13?
I felt like he did. Did they need to destroy Black 13? Really? I mean, I guess it's important, but not. It's just funny because the main.
Then it just isn't, like it's just gone, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's like the main driving quests in this book, with the exception of Mia, all feel a little bit periphery. And I actually like the introduction of King and the mission of it, and them talking to him in real time. We'll talk about the ending later. I like that for what it does later on, but I don't, maybe part of why it was hard to get through when I first read it was because I wasn't clear where that was going. I'm like, okay, well, the only thing I could really latch onto upon the first read of this book was Mia trying to have this baby, right? Like, I mean, it's, or Susannah, whatever you want to say. I mean, it's called The Song of Susannah for a reason. So
it's really Susannah's story.
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
I think the reason I struggled with it when I was young, despite it being short and despite a lot of it being really propulsive, is that the real heart of the story, where King's interest really lies, is in the relationship between Susannah and Mia. And that stuff is not, I like it a lot more on this one, but it is heavy and weighed down by a lot of mythology, backstory, philosophical ideas about good and evil and purpose and motherhood. And that's all stuff I didn't give a fuck about when I was, a teenager. So it's like, now though, I'm really into it. So we'll talk about it. Okay, I'm going to read what Esquire said in their 62 out of 75 thing. It's almost impossible to convey the complexity of the Dark Tower series, even if you proceed in book order. So what chance is there when starting with the 6th book of 7, especially when that book is a metafictional experiment connecting not only our world and the world of the Tower, but also all the worlds created by Stephen King. Oh, and King, he's a character in this one, a sort of literary MacGuffin whose survival is key to saving existence. It's a testament to King's character that he somehow pulls this off with humility and self-deprecation. Song of Susannah is not a bad book, just one that's forced to do a lot of heavy metaphysical lifting in a series already weighted with mad ambition. By this point, though, you're already in all the way. Heavy metaphysical lifting is a good way to put it, I think. Dan, do you think that's a fair ranking?
Wait, the ranking, the 62 out of all of his books?
62 out of 75.
Out of all of his books. Man, I want to say it's. I was gonna say I think that's a little too low. I mean, I find things to like in most King books, but I feel like, I have a running ranking. Let me see if it's updated.
Oh my god! Well, don't rate it now. We'll say
not your whole one. I think it's within range. I would say it's maybe 10 too low, but I think there's a range that's where I would kind of put this book.
Yeah.
I mean, it's in the lower quartile.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? Like,
but I think you summed it up. Yeah.
And I never would give it to someone who like wasn't already a King fan.
Right.
Like I would never be like, and you should read Song of Susanna. You don't like Stephen King? Let me tell you about Song of Susanna.
You summed it up though. Like, how do you rank this against The Shining or something? You know what I mean? It's kind of, these rankings are always kind of a fruitless endeavor unless they're, I don't know, all of the same ilk.
I'm probably missing some because I don't think I've kept up our last few books, but I'm just give me a cursory glance at this. I would actually probably put this in like the high 30s, low 40s for me. So it's like middle of the road King for me.
All right.
Yeah.
Cool.
But hey, check back with me. I gotta add some. I gotta tabulate some novels that aren't in there.
You gotta get Fairy Tale on there. Okay.
Yeah.
Publishers Weekly.
I like this more than Fairy Tale.
Publishers Weekly says avid readers of the series will either be completely enthralled or extremely irritated, Anna, when in a gutsy move, the author weaves his own character into this unpredictable saga. But either way, there's no denying the ingenuity with which King paints a candid picture of himself. Okay, let's move on. Let's talk about the synopsis. I'm going to read a synopsis, and then I have a question. And then we're going to head into the hook. Synopsis. The next to last novel in Stephen King's 7-volume magnum opus, Song of Susanna is at once a book of revelation, a fascinating key to unfolding mystery of the Dark Tower, and a fast-paced story of double-barreled suspense. To give birth to her chap, demon mother Mia has usurped the body of Susanna Dean and used the power of Black 13 to transport to New York City in the summer of 1999. The city is strange to Susanna and terrifying to the quote-unquote daughter of none who shares her body and mind. Saving the tower depends not only on rescuing Susanna, but also on securing the vacant lot Calvin Tower owns before he loses it to the Sombra Corporation. Enlisting the aid of Mani Senders, the remaining Katet climbs to the doorway cave and discovers that magic has its own mind. It falls to the boy, the Billy Bumbler, and the fallen priest to find Susanna Mia, who, in a struggle to cope with each other and with an alien environment, go Todash to Castle Discordia on the border of Endworld. In that forsaken place, Mia reveals her origins, her purpose, and her fierce desire to mother whatever creature the two of them have carried to term. Eddie and Roland, meanwhile, tumble into Western Maine in the summer of 1977, a world that should be idyllic but isn't. For one thing, it is real, and the bullets are flying. For another, it is inhabited by the author of a novel called Salem's Lot, a writer who turns out to be as shocked by them as they are by him. These are the simple vectors of a story rich in complexity and conflict. Its dual climaxes, one at the entrance to a deadly dining establishment, and the other appended to the pages of a writer's journal, will leave readers gasping for the saga's final volume. Which, dear reader, follows soon, say thank you. Question. Did you find this book hard to follow?
This time I didn't, because I think I had sort of realized over the years that, there's actually not that much story in this book, if that makes sense. Like or maybe not, story is not the right word. There are not many plot points in this book that actually move the thing forward. I feel like it's much more about this deeper exploration of wacky ideas and also Mia, Susanna, Odetta, right? Wait.
Detta.
See, this is what I'm talking about, Dan.
Her psyche.
Susanna, Mia, Detta, Odetta. Memories of major political events, tragedies, all coalescing within this one woman's mind. I will say, yeah, go ahead, Dan.
Well, yeah, I was going to say, I think the Freedom Writers thing, or not Freedom Writers. Sorry, not Freedom Writers.
I think because the first time around, I did find it hard to follow, which is why it took me so long. But I think I went into it this time, knowing how the Dark Tower ended. I think I was kind of telling myself, all right, all you really need to remember reading it this time, like the only information you need to retain for this next book are like these three things, right? And I think that allowed me to just sort of coast along for the ride a little bit more this time around. Sure. Now, maybe that means I didn't have as much of an in-depth reading experience as King wants us to have. But I sort of was like not letting myself get confused, because if anything got too gobbledygooky, I think I was just like, man, just roll with it. It's okay. Yeah. You're getting to the 7th book. It's easier to follow.
That's how I felt. It's like, because I have a pretty good like understanding of New York's geography. So I'd like basically be like, well, they're in this part of the city. And then at a certain point, I kind of realized like, it's not very important that I know exactly where they are. It's more when they are, I guess, that was important.
Yeah. For me, I think King does a good job of doing what you said, Dan, which is that, you can understand the broad strokes pretty easy. Obviously, I did when I was younger, and I didn't fully grasp everything. Being someone who has to host a podcast and talk about this book in depth, I wanted to make sure that I really understood all the little shit. Like, how did Mia and Susannah and Roland all come together? And that stuff, to me, I really had to sit down and like...
You need a diagram.
Yeah, man. And it's like, and I think I can sum it up relatively simply, but that's after sitting with it for so long. Because not only did we get remember we in the last Wolves of the Calla, we're talking about robots, vampires, low men, zombies, and more. Like all in the like weird, like, you know, dead creatures that are wandering around New York. We get all this stuff. And we're like, okay, we joked about how King has all these disparate creatures and ideas, and he's got to bring them under one umbrella. This time we get this whole new evolution of the can toy or the Tahin. I know that I'm pretty sure that those are different. The Tahin are the bird creatures, right? I think we learn all that in the next book. Okay, but this is what I'm saying, is there's all these new creatures, but then we also get all this talk about demon elementals, right? This whole concept that for just as there's, you know, the benevolent gods that, you know, guard the beam, the guardians of the beam, there's a dark side of it. There is these demon elementals that each have their own beam, and they are also hermaphrodites. They can be man and woman. And so basically, like this is the kind of shit that as somebody who doesn't read a lot of fantasy, this is where, you know, my brain starts to fill up with soda. And so I was like, okay, no, I'm really going to try to understand this. And it's like, okay, so back in book 1, Roland fucked a demon elemental, not knowing it was. Impregnated it.
Okay, wait. He fucked a succubus.
Okay, he fucked a succubus.
Turns out to have been.
Yes.
An elemental.
Yes.
In the first book.
Yes.
Not an elemental. In the first book, just a succubus, right?
Yes, although they're all connected, right?
Right, but like, I'm just saying there's retcon here. Like,
oh, sure, yeah.
Like,
I mean, that's, yeah.
Like, he clearly wanted to have an idea, like, Roland's going to have a kid, right? Like, that's the plot point he needed. And then it, like, tried to just backwards engineer.
Well, yeah, and it's like, because it's like Jurassic Park, right, Dan? I was thinking about that, like how the dinosaurs are both male and female, and that's how they mate or whatever.
Oh yeah,
it's like
nature finds a way.
Yeah, that's almost like literally what I was thinking.
Stephen King finds a way.
Yes,
yeah, no, I was gonna say, it's almost like freezing your eggs. It's like, all right, he shot his load into this succubus, and now that's on ice for a little bit, and we can always come back to it whenever we want to, right?
Yeah, and then they did when they were bringing Jake through the portal in the mansion, and Susannah was essentially, you know, engaging with the demon elemental there, and that's when it impregnated Roland's seed, filtered through demonese into her, and but then it's like, how did Mia get involved? Well, you know, and then there's that whole thing, which is essentially she has no parent. She was born from the primordial ooze that he calls the Prim. The Prim receded. The magic left the world as the machines took over. There were a few unfortunate souls that stuck around, including Mia, a succubus who essentially has no purpose, wanders around, fucks men to death, sees a child, says, I want one, isn't allowed to have one unless she becomes mortal. Walter turns her into a mortal by promising her, you must, you know, I'm going to give you a baby, but you can only have it for 7 years. I'm going to use a machine to turn you into a person. but then it's like, how did she get to Susannah?
Yeah, and this is okay. Sorry. That's my problem.
Well, see, and that's where I struggled too, is I really tried to sit with this and try to I was like, okay, I'm following it now. But then how the where we land with Mia / Susannah is that Odetta is the one who invited Mia in. And that is basically what I have a quote for that later, but that's like what Susannah realizes, is that it wasn't Detta who brought in Mia, which she thought, because Detta is mean, Mia is mean. So that would happen. But no, it's Odetta who is the charitable one, who sees the lost soul and wants to invite it in. That's what I got, but I'm sure it's a touch more complex, but I really sat with it for a while trying to make sense of that. And maybe there's more in the next book. I don't recall. But that's, I guess, what I'm talking about when I say it's hard to follow. I didn't need all of that because the broad idea is there, which is that Mia has possessed Susannah and they are having this baby together. And that is all you really need to know. The
question is...
Okay, go ahead.
Why, though? Like, why is Mia even a part of... Like, what is the... Why is... Like, or why is Susannah a part of it?
Mm-hmm.
Like, if you can make Mia mortal and you have some of Roland's seed, like, could you cut out the middleman?
Not sure. Yeah.
I'm
not sure.
You could
like,
even...
I just skimmed, I'll be honest, like, all that stuff, I was like, whatever, okay, fine.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, see, I am happy to do that heavy metaphysical lifting for this
Except
podcast.
I don't think he makes it easy for you.
No,
I think
he doesn't.
I don't think that it's supposed... This is one of the places where we do run into a problem with his sort of breezy approach to world building.
Yes.
Right?
I agree.
He feels like he probably is satisfied whoever, like, the dorks that really care are, right? Like, he probably feels like, oh, I've done enough there. Like, I've sort of explained it. But he doesn't really care about that.
No, he doesn't.
He's much more interested in the relationship among these women.
Yeah,
right?
absolutely.
And the two primary ones. He doesn't care about how it came to be, and that shows.
Right.
I almost want, and it's funny because this is actually how I did remember it, but obviously isn't true. You have Susannah, who is a character who has struggled with split personalities her whole life, right? I remembered it being just as simple of a thing as, and this is more of what they hint at, what was the call is, oh, it's just a new personality that's being brought out by Midworld, right? And she's carrying the baby and she's kind of communicating with that personality in her head, kind of like Mr. Grey a little bit, to bring it back to Dreamcatcher. That's how I remember it being. And I guess technically that doesn't work because you do need Mia to become her own body because of what happens eventually.
Yeah, Mia's got a whole story.
But also, King could have just gotten away with that too. I mean, it's Midworld. Anything can happen. Like it could have just been like, oh yeah, she has a split personality and took on its own body. Now it's separate from her. Like that, I would have bought that, right?
I think I gave Mia some magical properties. So even if she's turned human or at least turned into a mother, I think Flag might have left some of those powers in her. So whenever I couldn't explain something too much, I would just be like, well, she was sort of this elemental creature. So I'll just kind of roll with it. And I really did see her kind of as like a sperm transportation device, it seemed like.
But Susannah is the sperm transportation device.
Well, the question, I think that's the question,
I don't know,
right?
though, because
that's what they toy with at the end of the book is who was the vessel and who is the mother. And I think that's an interesting sort of tension that happens. Yeah, go ahead, Anna.
Sorry to interrupt. I'm just thinking about all of the person hours that have been spent by various Stephen King fans, like trying to crack this.
Yeah.
Like the ratio of that to how much time Stephen King spent. Like trying to figure this out.
And the funny thing is, I'm like you guys and I'm like King. I really don't care about the minutia. Like,
no, we don't. I mean, like, we're not the dorkies. We're dorks, but not that kind of dork.
We're not those kind of dorks. But that's what I'm saying.
There are those dorks, and God love those dorks because they create the stuff that we read later.
Yeah, right? They make the wikis that I use.
They make the wikis. God bless them.
But I'll say this whole dynamic was not explained properly in any wiki. I felt like I was consulting so many different things, really trying to find, and then finally I just kind of did it myself. Which is funny because I'm not that kind of person. I'm not that kind of reader, but I was like, I have to do this for the podcast because I have to do this because, I feel like if I were a listener, I would want somebody to explain that shit. So I'm like, I will do that. Go ahead.
I can keep it pretty simple. I mean, I was raised old fashioned. So like, I believe life begins at the thinny. And when I was growing up, my parents, we used to protest outside of North Central Positronics, with signs. And we'd be like, you're a slut, Mia.
Okay, we're going to talk more about all this stuff in a bit.
Supreme Court ruling, North Positronics.
Yeah, wait, Mia versus...
Roland versus...
Mia versus Susannah. Like, I don't know. How would they rule? Okay, well, moving on.
We are going to touch on some of this stuff a little bit more, but not the minutia of it, but the broader stuff of it, especially with Mia. We're going to talk more about that in a section we call The Hook.
Ah, yes. Don't you see how clear it all is? Not only can you see the future, I can change it. You can change it, exactly.
Here in The Hook, we break down the themes, the bigger ideas, the big questions of this. And so I have a few here. There's obviously a lot to talk about, but I think I have a few questions that I think can distill it down a little bit. Being in the 6th book of the Dark Tower saga, what are the new things that you feel like you learned about this world, the collapse of the world, what the tower represents? Like, what is the new information that you feel like you gleaned in this book? Caffrey, I'll start with you.
Well, I guess this idea of, well, I don't know, this isn't necessarily new to the mythology.
And it's okay if it's not new, or maybe it's just
like
elaborated
a dark and light side of everything, right? Like they talk about the elemental side of the demon. They even talk about the beam guardians, right? Like there's the darkness of the beam. Even the way you think about New York and the Dixie Pig, this kind of subterranean underworld. Like you said, that's the concept of duality is not new at all to this book, but some of the logistics of how all that operates feels quite new, I think.
Yeah, it's definitely elaborated upon. It's the central theme, I think, of this book.
And then also, too, I mean, they hinted at Stephen King in the last book, but we see the ways that God, the storyteller, which I know we'll get into in a bit, and the characters that he supposedly created interact with one another, and how they have actual influence on one another, like the kind of Ouroboros snaking its own tail kind of thing. I feel like that gets confirmed and much more pronounced in this book, especially by the end of it.
Cool. Pfleegor.
Yeah, I think this book too is it gets into the concept of twinning a little bit.
Yeah.
And I think this kind of twins book 2 in a lot of ways for me, because I think even just I guess this would be book 1, book 2 combined, we'll say, because like the Susannah meeting with Mia, it reminded me a lot of the Pavlar that Roland had with Flag over the fire, where it was kind of like laying out the story. And then I think even with like Eddie kind of stepping up, like I actually think this book is very Eddie focused. We see him fight in book 2, but in this one, he's a lot more confident, right? I think Roland even acknowledges like, wow, he went in there and, despite being wounded, is just able to keep going and carry out the mission. And if you compare that to book 2, where he's kind of like,
fumbling,
going through withdrawal, all that stuff. And Roland's like, this guy barely, scraped by.
Yeah. What do you think, Anna?
I'm struggling a bit. I think Dan and Dan both had really good points. And when I think about what is new for me in this book, part of it really is, it's probably my favorite female Stephen King character, maybe. Like, I mean, she's really fully drawn, I mean, he's had 6 books or whatever, like 4 books. And she's not abused.
Yeah.
she's not like,
she endures much pain, but is not.
She endures a lot of pain, but she's not like in an abusive relationship. She's got a, like, literally, I guess, got a dark side, right? Like,
several.
And several. And I think, and she's strong without being sort of stereotypically strong, and she's in a good relation. Like, also, it's like a good relationship. How many good relationships are there, right? In Stephen King books, like just like a healthy, normal, positive, 2 people love each other. There's not a lot of tension. Like apparently what he and Tabby have.
That's interesting, these approaches, because I think for me it's like I feel like, and this I think says something about the emphasis on character and an environment in a lot of ways over simple plot mechanics, because I think almost what I was asking was like, what did we learn about the tower? You know what I mean? Like in a purely I don't know, narrative sense, like just the idea of what happened, what brought about, the world turning. And obviously a lot of these things have been teased, but I think one thing I found fascinating was, we've obviously seen all the broken down tankers and all the robots that are collapsing. And this whole idea of the world moved on, and a lot of it is to be blamed on the emphasis on technology, right? This is something we talked about in Wolves of the Calla, but Mia's character really delivers a lot of the more philosophical notions of what happened here. And that was some of the most fascinating stuff to me. The idea of when the age of magic passed, the age of machines came. And the idea of the prim, this sort of primordial magical sort of thing, receding and leaving behind these, whether it's demons or Toadash creatures or whatever, and then men coming in and trying to merge magic and science. And that's something that's discussed a lot. And I think it talks about that idea of duality that you mentioned, Dan, is destroying magic through science. And Mia has this line, your faith fails you and you replace it with rational thought. But there is no love in thought, nothing that lasts in deduction, only death in rationalism. And I found that really compelling and really, really interesting in the guise of this world. And we have, this really sort of beautiful passage I'm going to read here, talking about the age of the machines. And it says, the magic went away. Marilyn retired to his cave in one world. The sword of Eld gave way to the pistols of the gunslingers in another, and the magic went away. And across the arc of years, great alchemists, great scientists, and great, technicians, I think? Great men of thought, anyway. That's what I mean. Great men of deduction. These came together and created the machines which ran the beams. They were great machines, but they were mortal machines. They replaced the magic with machines. Do you ken it? And now the machines are failing. In some worlds, great plagues have decimated whole populations. And there we get, all of the stand right there. And Susannah mentions the super flu. And Mia continues, the Crimson King's breakers are only hurrying along a process that's already in train. The machines are going mad. You've seen this for yourself. The men believe there would always be more men like them to make more machines. None of them foresaw what's happened, this universal exhaustion. Susannah says the world has moved on. Mia says, aye, lady, it has, and left no one to replace the machines which hold up the last magic in creation, for the prim has receded long since. The magic is gone and the machines are failing. Soon enough the Dark Tower will fall. Perhaps there will be time for one splendid moment of universal rational thought before the darkness rolls forever. Wouldn't that be nice? And I thought a lot about the time he was writing this in, which, was after the Y2K scare, right? And 9/11, obviously. When we did our From a Buick 8 episode, we talked a lot about the sort of shadow of 9/11 as it falls over that book, which is pretty nihilistic and grapples with the nature of evil and where it comes from. And why do things like that happen? And what are these evil things that enter our world? And he seems to really be grappling with that idea in these last Dark Tower books, which are very much about how humankind has stripped the world of magic and introduced all these machines that in their own fallibility are our destruction. And, if you think about The Stand, it really does go back to that, which is, it was a malfunction, a door malfunction that basically allowed Captain Trips to spread throughout the country. Although Randall Flagg's role in that is obviously up for debate. But I don't know. These are just ideas that I thought that I really pulled from this reading, and Mia's section in particular, where she's really laying out this was the end, Pfleegor.
Yeah. And I think he mentions the Luddites earlier or later in the book. And there's kind of like we kind of misremember. They were more of like a labor organization, like predating Marx. They were afraid that machines would replace manual labor and make people unemployed, basically. But it's interesting you talk about that with we rely almost too much on machines. And then, in the wake of Y2K, in the wake of 9/11, and how maybe we have to kind of find that balance between the magic and the mystery and modern man. But it's, I don't have a huge thing of examples right off the top of my head, but more and more I think about that, though. You're right. There is this combination of the technology and the modern, with also not forgetting where we came from and not letting the pendulum swing too far to one side or the other, right?
Well, and this, just to get topical for one brief second, and I don't want to talk about this too much because it's annoying, but
COVID.
No, but when you think about Twitter,
COVID was designed in a lab.
I mean, that's
when you talk about Twitter collapsing, right? Everybody is Twitter's collapsing, and I laugh because I'm like, yes, please free us from this horrible thing. But then you think about how much people's often their only mode of marketing or their only way of getting their stuff out there, or all the jobs that are intertwined with this. It's the same with Facebook. You know, like my wife works in e-commerce, and she hates fucking Facebook more than anybody, but she's like, this shit is so intertwined with business infrastructure now that all of these things are collapsing. It's good for humanity, but it's bad for so much of the commerce as it's kind of, because it's become part of culture, you know?
And also there's a part of humanity it's bad for too. I mean, there's a lot of activism that's taken place on Twitter, a lot of organizing that wouldn't be able to take place because Twitter is decentralized still for the moment, right? Mm-hmm. So there's organizing that can take place. Disabled people have been able to create communities that they would have been able to, like in basically almost any other platform. It's a really flawed platform. but
that's the thing, right? Is we've allowed, and that's the thing, is there are good things about all of it. But
it's funny too. Twitter's got like so much funny shit on it, but also so much horrible shit.
This website is free for now. But I think I really liked that section that you read. I actually underscored that universal exhaustion as being a nice line, and I kind of think about how there's something to the idea of exhaustion more even than machines or magic. It's losing the will to go on.
Yeah.
And King might make the argument that it's like, it's magic that gives us the will to go on or whatever. But I feel like that's the rose is the will to go on, right? Like the rose is like the willingness to keep going. And I don't know. I don't have a really huge thought there, except that
I love what you're saying, and I think it's very true. And I think go ahead, Dan.
Well, no, it's funny you say, because we talked last time, right, about where Roland is at this point, and it's just, and how one of his big traits is just his persistence to soldier on no matter how much bad shit happens. So no matter how much bad shit he does, he, you know, there's always that threat of him willing to sell it to his friends for the tower in the back of his head. And it's funny because Roland really isn't in this book that much if you think about it. I mean, we haven't really talked about it much yet. And so when Anna's talking about exhaustion, I don't know how intentional it is, but I wonder if Roland is almost just kind of like, all right, let's fucking get there by the end of this. You know what I mean? I mean, he's in the book. It's not like he's not, but he's definitely not the protagonist, I don't think. And he's not really, I mean, what could we say that he does in this book other than shoot out some people at a gas station? And then, yeah, he kind of takes a backseat to Eddie and King, I feel like, in the next scene.
His exhaustion is different than the universal exhaustion that I think Mia is touching upon, that is causing the machines to break and humanity to kind of slow down and for time to get funny. Like Roland is, you know, monomaniacal, right? And that's not always a good, and we know for sure that is not necessarily good. Yeah. And that even his pursuit of the tower is not necessarily a noble quest. Like I kind of love that about these books, that it's becomes very clear that he is not like looking for the Holy Grail and like going to do something good. He just really wants to get to the tower. Like it's just this, it's just a mania on some level.
He doesn't even know what he'll do when he gets there.
He doesn't even know what he's going to do. Doesn't know what he's going to find. It's just a mania. It's just like this obsessive thing. And that's different than the will to live.
Right.
Like, and the will to create.
Right.
The rose is the real will to create and the will to live and the will to be among others in this. And that is something that the rest of the quartet have. And Roland, in and out of that.
Yeah, and I think like the melding of technology and magic. I think Roland's seen the pendulum swing both directions, because in book 4 they're seeing like abandoned gas stations that are like, oh, and it's this magic liquid that powers iron horses. So at a certain point the magic becomes technology and the technology becomes magic, and I think he's just so unimpressed, kind of like what you were saying. He's got such a singular focus that he's seen this all before. That's why when he goes to New York, he can adapt so quickly. When he wakes up in the airplane in book 2 and he just pieces together, okay, this is some sort of flying thing, and he just moves on to it. Whereas everyone else is starting to notice that, the world has moved on. I think he's been very aware of the world moving on for so long that it doesn't even affect him anymore. But, just like they're talking about, like the blades of grass are now turning brown, right? There's no life going and the beams are disappearing. So there is this sense of just like decay and exhaustion throughout all of the worlds here.
Yeah, it's why I think The Stand is actually a really natural partner with the Dark Tower series, because when I think about book 4, I had that same thought, Pfleegor, about I think one of the enduring images from this entire series for me, and we talked about it in our Wizard and Glass episode, is the sight of all those old abandoned tankers that are neglected and husks of a different world, one that's, long gone. Because that's really what The Stand is too, is when the apocalypse happens, there's so much about all of, Glenn talks at length about the gadgets that are left behind, and how as soon as the world ends, everyone's dead and we repurpose and we form a community, the first thing we try to do is get the power on again so we can have our gadgets again,
And the gadgets fuck us up again, right? Because they turn it on and they overload the system.
Yeah. And it's the same sort of thing is that enduring idea of, will we learn that these are the things that are killing us? Or, and it's cyclical just in The Stand, the same way that so much of the Dark Tower universe is too. And I don't know. I thought about that a lot in this book, not just because they mentioned Captain Trips like very specifically in that section I just read, but really just the idea of King's general viewpoint on what it is that will cause the end. It will be something so simple as a technical glitch, or people who just exploit or, emphasize science over magic. And obviously you can interpret that however you want.
I don't know if it's that simple. I mean, he also believes in evil, right? Or at least his books have a pretty clear, like, Randall Flagg is not technology. Walter O'Dim is a magician.
I certainly wasn't trying to say that that's the only thing. I'm saying that
I just think it's interesting because I think the message that I just fall back to this idea that it's not technology, it's exhaustion. It's not like one or the other. It's have we
both.
lost our willingness to create at all? Have we become dependent on magic? Have we become dependent on technology? Like are we seeing the world for what it is? Or are we lost in some other kind of fog? And again, I keep going back to what is the rose? What is the, it's seeing clearly.
Yeah, I think it's seeing the husk of kind of what the world used to be. And look at Andy, the robot, right? He's at like a 2% charge. So even, the natural world and the artificial world are all sort of at the end of the line here, right? Where everything is kind of petering out, which is leaving it open for, the Prim to reclaim and all of that.
Yeah, because it's not like we want to go back to the Prim, right? I mean, it's not like King is not himself in the new term Luddite. He's not anti-technology, and these books aren't preaching anti-technology.
Yeah, he's on Twitter all day.
Right. I think they're kind of making an argument about dependence and about mania and about focus, and I don't know. I still think
agree
with you. I think that when if you look at Mia's monologue, definitely like that's what she's saying. I just think actually the book is a richer text than that.
I agree, and I stand by everything I said because I think it all can be true at the same time.
Yeah.
I think that's one thing of many things. What Flagg is the opportunist, right? Flagg is all of, is the Crimson King's men. It's the men who took Mia into this thing and promised her, turned her mortal and promised her a baby. It's the people who are, exploiting magic and science together. Flagg has always been the opportunist, and that's why he's such a great King villain, is because he really does have no true allegiance. One of the things that really struck me here is he does, Mia describes him as being the Crimson King's prime minister, but I do find it interesting later when she talks about how Walter will sometimes introduce himself as Walter O'Dim of Endworld and then Walter O'Dim of All World, because he does, in my opinion at least, he very much sees himself as being the true king here. And those are the people, you're right, that is the evil. That is the evil that exploits the tragedy and the technology and the dependence that we have. So I think all those things can live comfortably next to each other. And I think that's, I agree, it's a very rich text and all that stuff is there. I have another question for all of you. What is the Song of Susannah? What does that represent? What is her song? And what does it mean? And why is the book called Song of Susannah?
Well, isn't it literally the gasp she kind of lets out as she's birthing? That's what I took it as, was like the noise that, the child birth pains where she kind of like screams and lets out, and they're like, she sang her song kind of.
But what about a man of constant sorrow?
I think it's a maid of constant sorrow. Right.
I think it's like a Sopranos episode title. It can mean all those things. Yeah, exactly. No, for real, because they did like.
I just love of all the things you could pull. It's a Sopranos title.
Hey, and this was in the heyday of the Sopranos. King loves the Sopranos, always has. But
it is a Sopranos episode.
This is the long term parking of the series. Yeah.
Yeah. No, but there's mafia guys in it. Yeah,
it's true. Yeah.
I say for one thing, I hate that fucking Kamala.
I like that.
Thing.
Really?
I hate that.
Oh, I like that.
From the beginning, I do not like that song. I do not like the whole refrain shit. It's probably because so early on they remark about how Kamala is also cum.
They actually say
the ejaculate, and I'm just like, I don't.
To call back to last episode, come my lady, come my lady.
It's all that. And even like that fucking thing and stanzas in every chapter, and like they're whatever. I mean, I guess they're supposed to make sense. I just like flip past them.
It reminds me of Karma Chameleon, the Culture Club
That's
song,
what I thought,
which is also about coming too. Like,
is it really?
Well, you come and go. Like, there's a lot of
come a chameleon.
That's what I hear in my head when I read that.
Culture Club, crazy town.
Yeah, I also think I was thinking what Pfleegor was saying, just because they do at the end, they compare it to song at the end. Yeah. But I also think too, just like Song of Ice and Fire, right? I was just thinking like the journey of Susannah. Like,
that's
it's like a more archaic, cool way to say that. I think that was. I guess it has two meanings. I'm like, it has all these meanings. I'm like, those are the two meanings.
I do think it has a lot of meanings. Yeah. And I guess for me, because again, I spent a lot of time rereading and sitting with a lot of the Mia and Susannah stuff, especially at the end, because when Susannah sort of retreats into these memories of the Freedom Summer murders, Anna, you had mentioned, that earlier. I really had trouble grasping why this was coming in. And it we spend a lot of time in Susannah's sort of weird memory holes. She has a memory palace with the Dogan, but then we have these scenes where she's almost, it feels like she's free falling through, Toad Ash, whatever you want to call it. She's hearing all these deaths. All these people are dying. John F. Kennedy's dying. Bobby Kennedy's dying. Astronauts are dying. Like, everyone's dying. There's reference to all these political tragedies, and they're all capped with things like O Discordia. And so I actually last night watched Mississippi Burning, which is about the Freedom Summer murders, because I didn't know a lot about it, but I guess like the basic summation, although I don't know, Anna, you're smarter than me. Is that something you could summarize?
I mean, she gets to it. It is distinct from the Freedom Riders. It was a voter registration drive that a lot of white students came down and got trained by SNCC, the Student Nonviolent Coalition. Anyway, these three young people. I believe one of them was Black.
Yeah, two of them were white, one was black.
Yeah.
Cheney, Goodman, and Schwerner.
Right. Got murdered, and they were not found for a while. And it was, in some ways a turning point for the movement, because it was obviously designed to scare them away, and the movement doubled down.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I think that's the importance of it in kind of the political history.
Absolutely.
Is that it was supposed to be a time, it was supposed to be evil showing its face and get the fuck away. And then there was a community of people who came together and said no.
Yeah. And I think that's exactly how King is using it in this. Mm-hmm. And I think for me, that ties to the idea of what the song is. This is something that I spent a lot of time kind of reading about and digging into. And what does it all mean, all these various kinds of death? And what is this kind of repeated cry of O Discordia? Like, what is that really getting at? And Discordia in the world of this book, best summarized, is kind of chaos anarchy, all the things that would be caused by the collapse of the Dark Tower. And all of these sections that I initially skimmed over, all of these deaths, these news reports, important figures dying, there's like, you know, kind of an extended reference to the South Vietnamese coup of 1963. And then obviously the Freedom Summer murders, these moments that were really kind of tragic. But the thing about the Freedom Summer murders is the persistence of it. And the idea that the movement actually was able to, you know, overcome and not be quelled and destroyed by, you know, what looked like imminent collapse or discordia, if you want to put it that way. And so Susannah has this kind of extended memory sequence of this, you know, wonderful night marching with everybody and fighting for something and believing in something. And she talks about the idea of camaraderie in spite of fear, what she calls glorious and some would say stupid hope. And this memory is for her, she calls it a death song because she hears this busker playing Man/Maid of Constant Sorrow, which is a song she sang while being part of this activism and knowing these people who died in Oxford. And to me, it was a really interesting sort of way for King to, I think, sum up the difference between Susannah and Mia, because this is really what causes Mia to come to a sense of awareness about what is good and what is evil and what does it mean to fight for something. Because Mia is somebody who, you know, came from nowhere, was relegated to this town. Her only purpose in life was, you know, to basically fuck men to death. And she didn't know why. And then when she saw a child, she had this single-minded purpose and she was willing to throw anybody under the bus to accomplish that. And, you know, Flag even attacks her, or no, it's Richard Sayre in the end. He calls her a meaningless spirit whose existence revolved around no more than fucking the occasional saddle tramp. And the idea is that she believed in nothing. But then by witnessing Susannah's memories and this song that is really the song that, I don't know, gives Susannah hope in this moment of absolute, you know, collapse and terror, it gives Mia hope and helps her understand the idea that there's more to life than, you know, just single-minded pursuits of whatever it is that you want. And so for me, the song is really, I think it sums up the idea that even with all these beams collapsing, the thing that gives one purpose is working with people towards the hope of a better world, you know, even in the face of imminent collapse. And I think that that's ends up being this, you know, the thing that sort of, you know, is able to separate Mia and Susannah in the end, or at least help them find like common ground. So I don't know. Do you guys think there's any truth to that?
Oh, I think it's there. I got the exact same thing. I mean, I think that it's there. And in fact, I was sort of annoyed by the remembrance of this activism, which starts to occur pretty, you know, soon. And I was like, what the hell is he trying to? Part of me was just like, this is just, you know, liberal white guy King, like trying to, this means she's a good person. See, she was involved in SNCC. She was a good person. And that's how you can tell. But then when that moment, when Mia sees it and it changes Mia, I was like, oh, that's what we've been working up to. This isn't just like memories to show, you know, the high moral rectitude of Odetta/Susannah. This is a way of showing Mia what it means to be human.
Yeah. Like
what it means to truly have community. Yeah. And to do something even though you think you might lose. Mm-hmm. You know, and to sacrifice. Because yeah, Mia's, you know, mania is to just in a weird way is to just have the child. Like, it's not even to raise it. Like, she's just like, really, if you think about it, like, that's all all she really is like, we're going to have this. You know, the raising of it is going to be like the reward or something. But like, she's focused on having it. And she doesn't want to stand up to she doesn't want to risk anything. She knows she's being fooled and still doesn't want to take a risk, still doesn't want to try and do something different. And then to see, like, in the face of, you know, a couple centuries worth of hatred, a group of people who have, on the face of it, no prayer of changing the world, insist that they're going to change the world anyway. I think that's really powerful. I mean, I'll be honest, like that whole story can make me really emotional. Like that hasn't happened very much in human like history, to have like a group of people decide that they don't, that it may not work. And they're going to go up against something that's, I mean, again, we all know this. The grip, that structural racism has on America still, right? But like people with guns and dogs and fire hoses versus people who refuse to fight for themselves in the sense of like physical, like didn't look like it was going to work out. And it did. Yeah. And she didn't know that. Actually, what's really awesome about that change is that what Susannah shows her, Mia doesn't know that they wound up making that change. Yeah. All Mia sees is their courage and their community. And that is what grips her. Not the fact that they eventually won out.
Exactly. I think.
It really does remind me of, I think someone's called it a rabbit hole earlier, right? But it really is like Alice falling through the rabbit hole and like, oh, there's a clock, there's this. Like it does feel like the deeper we go into Mia, Susannah, Detta, whoever, Psyche, it becomes so prismatic and fragmented, which I actually do like tone wise. It has this kind of dream logic to it, which I appreciate. But I do think I glossed over a bit of it just because she's going on such a non-linear journey. Well, I guess it's linear, but a surrealistic journey through time at that point. So yeah,
we're also in the thick of the climax, right? We're about to enter the Dixie Pig. Like there's a lot of action happening, and then we're getting all this metaphysical stuff. So it is oddly structured, and that makes me think of your criticism earlier, Anna, about the ways that these books are split up. I do wonder if maybe it would have been helpful if all this stuff wasn't happening right at the ending, like in the midst of them right about to enter the Dixie Pig, because that is sort of the central weirdness of this book a little bit. And you could say it's balanced, but like, when Rothman and I were talking about this, he was like, "Oh, Song of Susannah is great. It's like a chase, it's very propulsive." And it is when it's about everyone but Susannah and Mia. When it's about them, it's very surreal. A lot of it takes place in mind palaces. A lot of it takes place over long conversations that are filled with lore, with longing, with philosophy, with big ideas. And all that stuff's great. But that's, I think, like where the book can alienate some people. I think people who really just want to get to the fireworks factory. But there is a lot of really beautiful writing in a lot of that. And I'm glad that I did like dig into it because it is really rewarding and I can see what King was going for. That said, I'm not sure that it's the most elegantly presented because it really does, hit you like in kind of a huge messy ball. But yeah, last question I have in the hook here. But I guess what would you say this book has to say about storytelling? I'm thinking specifically about the King idea. We talked over email a little bit about the death of the author. And I think that's worth discussing here a little bit.
Anna, you want to take that?
Okay, it's Roland Barthes. And
Roland.
Oh my God. And
we connected all the dots.
And he died in 1999. I actually don't know. I mean, the general idea is sort of foundational to like postmodern criticism, right? Which is that you can separate the author from the text, that the author is kind of incidental and is a typewriter for these larger ideas out in the world, which I think is like what is happening here. Like that is like literally what happens in this story, right? Is this, I mean, I was going to say like, is as much as we can mock like King coming into this story on his own, I will say, and this is something the reviews pointed out, is he somehow doesn't come across as pompous. I'll give him that. And that is a neat trick, right?
Yeah.
Like to put yourself in your own novel and yet have some humility about it. I admire him. Points for difficulty for sure on that. But there is this idea.
I was just going to say he like criticizes himself. He's like obviously looking back on himself during that time and being very critical of that person, which is like obviously very interesting, especially in light of conversations we've had about sobriety and stuff like that.
Yeah. And I appreciate, if we're going to talk about the diary entries and stuff, what he has to say about the little bits and pieces we get about his sobriety journey there are something that redeems that section for me for sure.
Sure.
But and of course, this also goes to like there's Jungian archetypes too, right? Like that there's only a few stories in the world, and we all just keep telling them over and over and over. The reason I thought of death of the author is because obviously there is a death of the author.
It's pretty aggressive, yeah.
But there is, again, like, and also he speaks of this, he speaks of this in other places too, which is that he's always felt like he's transcribing, right? And one of the criticisms of King, and you could say this about the Freedom Summer section too, is that he coasts on cultural capital that he didn't earn, right? That he has a lot of name brands. He has a lot of like references to other works.
Red Death.
I think the Red Death, like Harry fucking Potter, like that. And that is also something that the postmodernist would probably like really want to point to, is like he's not even really synthesizing. He's just like, it's just coming together, and he's the outlet for it. And then the other part of that theory is that we each bring our own the book is different for each of us. Like we each bring our own history, our own personal, stories, and that book, although it may read the same exact words on the page and we're all reading it, it's going to be different. It's a different book for everyone that comes to it. And I think that's another idea that's kind of in here, that when we read, like we are putting ourselves into that story in some way.
Yeah. And I'm always drawn to that question of like, and I know this is wrapped up in that philosophy, which is the question of whether the writer is the creator or merely the interpreter, And yeah,
it's interesting too. I mean, and we talk a lot about that in On Writing. It'll be funny when we get to King's Dominion. I mean, technically everything is King's Dominion in this book. But it's funny because he actually gets at a lot of the ideas he talks about in On Writing, which was published by this point, about being more of a transcriber or an interpreter. But it's funny because we criticized that idea a little bit on the On Writing episode. And it's interesting because he does do such a good job of portraying himself in this humble yet realistic fashion. I really like the section where they're interacting with King. But it's funny because it's also used to deliver this idea that is not humble at all. Like this notion that he is God, even if he is maybe getting the ideas from characters who are visiting him, there's still that notion that he probably created these characters. And it's just kind of it's a chicken or the egg or snake eating its own tail situation, which I really like that tension. I love it that it's this idea of this seemingly humble man confronted with a very cosmic deifying idea. And I don't really have much to say about whether the book goes on one side of that argument or the other. I think it kind of leaves room for both, but I think that is a hard stunt to pull off. Like what Anna was saying, it's hard to make yourself look good as the writer, putting the writer in the book without being annoying, even though it's kind of annoying at the very end. That's hard. I'm excited. Should we save that for till we get to heroes and villains, like the end?
Yeah, I have. We should talk about King a little bit there. Yeah.
Yeah, we should. We'll save that. But it's hard enough to make yourself come off, humble and not humble braggy as the writer. It's also hard to package that with this kind of bigger, more complex idea. And I think he threads that needle really well for the most part, and he'll continue to in the next book too. I really appreciate that. I can't weigh in on. It's funny because when you said Bart's, that's his name, Bartles. It's funny because I think we read one essay by him in this class, where I was reading another guy named Bert O. Sates, whose writing I also can't get into, and I was conflating them, so I can't comment on what Anna was saying. But I do.
It was a long time ago for me. I mean, I'm pretty sure I got that right, but
No, you got it right for sure. No, I looked it up. I got Bart O. States. His shit's all about phenomenology. I can't even say the
phenomenology.
Word. Yeah, and I don't even really know what it is.
I wanted to say something about the fact that whether or not King is the god in here, and I guess I did get something that maybe I shouldn't have, which is that there's a conundrum. There's a it's maybe snake eating its own tail thing, which is that although King is the typewriter, there must be something bigger than him if he's the typewriter, right? Yeah. Like
the turtle.
I guess the turtle, right? Because he recognizes that too.
And there's God. And it does raise this interesting idea. If there are other worlds than these, are there worlds in which there's a different author, like creating, right?
I don't think so, because one of the things I was struggling with when I was reading it too was Eddie kept saying, "This is the world we can't change." That's
the world they can't change. But is there? You can see it as like there's multiple worlds where if like Peter Straub's world, it's like it's the Peter Straub characters who can't change it.
I was gonna say, I guess the big takeaway is we should have named our Discord Discordia, probably.
That's really smart, actually.
Yeah. Okay, cool. Let's move on to our next section, structure and format.
Look at me. Look at me, teacher.
All right, structure and format. We have a very particular one in this book, stanzas. And I'm not talking about George Costanza. I'm talking about stanzas like in prose or in poetry or in songs. Each chapter is a stanza. The prose concludes with a stave and response verses in Kala dialect that comment upon the action. What do you think about this device? And do you think it... Anna says thumbs
Anna hates
down.
it. Yeah, we know. Spoiler alert.
Do you say just call them chapters?
Call them fucking chapters. I don't. It adds nothing. Adds absolutely nothing. I know that King is kind of a poetry head, right?
Yeah, really.
And this actually, there's some lovely references to various poems in this, but I always get annoyed by a lot of his sort of gestures at it himself, and I don't know. It just didn't really add anything for me.
Yeah, it's a neat idea, but I don't. And as much as we discussed the whole idea of the song, the importance of music in the world of this, I still don't think it's pronounced enough to necessarily like the structural sort of contribution doesn't complement the themes. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's just it's just a thing that he did, which is fine.
And also we've left the Kala. So part of me is like,
yeah.
why are we still doing this?
Enough with the songs. Well, enough with the Kamala.
I didn't like the songs when we were in the Kala.
Go ahead, Dan.
I mean, I agree with you both that it doesn't really add anything to what this book is trying to say or do. However, I always like when King organizes his chapters or stanzas or co-stanzas. Hey, and Peter Straub has the book Coco, so that's all I'm saying. Yeah. I just sort of aesthetically like it when King organizes them around music. Like in Christine, it's all broken up to teenage love songs, teenage car songs, teenage love songs.
That is better.
Yeah,
no,
that
I
makes
agree.
sense.
It's better. I agree that's better.
He did like country western songs or something, like, or if he did old folk songs, he did all of them were like somehow like traditional ballads, like made of constant sorrow.
Yeah, that's true. If he had done like all like Pete Seeger songs or something like that, that would have been cooler.
All Crazy Town songs.
Yeah, I can name two
one.
Crazy Town songs, and one of them is a cover.
Kamala.
There's Butterfly, and then there's don't they cover Only Happy When I'm Drunk by the Alcoholics? I think isn't that the
that sounds like a song they'd cover.
Yeah. And anyway, they but I don't know. I think I just like it as kind of like a throwback thing to something King has always done. It sort of reminds me of Lord of the Rings a little bit, which there's a beautiful piece of writing about Lord of the Rings in this that we'll talk about in a little bit.
Yeah.
But I just because Tolkien has like a song every 20 pages, I feel like
don't
throughout
like
that
it in
series.
Tolkien either.
Yeah. What'd you say?
Don't like it in Tolkien either.
My dad, because my dad introduced me to Lord of the Rings, and yeah, he like always rags on the songs. He's like, oh, good God. He's like, why the fuck are they singing while they're on their way to do this? But
I don't know. I thought the scene in this with Tom Bombadil was really good.
Love Tom Bombadil. Yeah, where
they left him out of the Dark Tower movie. Yeah.
Tom Bombadil has it's become such a running joke because I think he's like the most universally despised Tolkien character.
He's the Jar Jar Binks of
I had a Jar Jar Binks joke coming right up. I did.
And he keeps what's funny about Tom Bombadil too is that after they've left his house, he keeps much like the songs here. He keeps popping up again, like, "Oh, here I am!" Like for
like up from behind bushes.
Like
yeah, pretty much.
Man.
You're like, "God damn it!" But yeah, I don't know. I agree with you both that I don't think it really adds much beyond just I like the little jolly side of King. I mean, they do. If you read them after each one, they kind of comment on what's going on, and I do like how the response is usually sort of the opposite of what the call is. I just found to contribute to be some nice foreshadowing. I mean, I'm not gonna like defend it to the death. I liked it. I enjoyed it. What can I say?
It just gave it some kind of structure. It didn't really add or detract for me, but I do enjoy when someone takes a shot and you're like, okay, now we're gonna build this along, this existing structure and whatnot. So
yeah, King loves a good structural device, whether it contributes or not. It's not like again, I don't mind it, but it's kind of like a little lofty in a story that doesn't really earn it. It's like I said, just call them chapters.
I will say, aside from what they're called or the songs or everything, I did like after the longer stretches of Wolves and Wizard and Glass too. Wizard and Glass is pretty long chapters and sections from what I remember. I did like how much the book was broken up. It just helped it barrel along for me a little bit. So just like pace wise, I did enjoy that.
Yeah, the only other thing I wanted to call out in this section is just kind of a little rhyme with Dreamcatcher and, also with Regulators and, no, not Desperation, more so Regulators, which is the Mind Palace idea. The idea that characters can retreat into a place in their minds where they are safe from whatever it is that is, possessing them or infringing upon them. And yeah, the idea of being possessed, obviously, like, it seems that Dreamcatcher did not get that notion out of him because the Jonesy and Mr. Gray sections of Dreamcatcher, I saw a lot of shared DNA in the Mia and Susannah stuff, and often in ways not good. I think he struggles to portray the struggle, I guess, between these two personalities as they exist in one person, especially because he describes their fighting as somewhere between mental and physical, but it's hard to imagine that without thinking of like Evil Dead, like him being possessed and punching himself in the face and stuff like that.
Do you think Mia speaks in a British accent like Mr. Gray does in the film?
I would hope so. But yeah, anyways, I just thought that was a neat thing to note and just kind of a structural tool that King uses when he, he's got a character who, can't just be, at the whim of whatever it is that's possessing them all the time. He still wants that character to exist independently and be able to communicate with other people. And so he uses a lot of the same devices in terms of, Jonesy has the phone or whatever he uses within the head that he's able to communicate with Duddits. And then in this book, she has the Dogan or whatever, where she can sometimes communicate with Eddie and stuff.
It's an interesting notion that when one is possessed by an evil or bad, whatever, a power beyond your own with nefarious intent, let's say, that there is some real part of you struggling to get out that can see what's happening but can't do anything about it. Mm-hmm. It makes me think of addiction.
Yeah. Definitely.
That's what it can feel like, is like, I am just a passenger on this crazy train. Like there is something that has taken possession of me, and I am doing things that are not within my value system, and I can just, all I can do is watch, and it feels like someone else is operating the, system.
Right. Yeah. And I think that is something that pops up in a lot of King books, and it is a super interesting tool that he uses. And I don't know, I just thought it was a neat thing that it resurfaced here again. It's obviously something that weighs heavy on him. Any other thoughts on structure before we move on to heroes and villains? All right,
I'm gonna have to kill this fucking clown. Welcome to the Losers Club, asshole!
Here in Heroes and Villains, we discuss characters. We've talked a lot about characters so far, but I do have some more to say about Mia, and I'm sure you guys do too. I guess, did anyone else see the comparisons with Nadine Cross from The Stand?
Oh yeah, totally. Just sort of the being promised it. Well, I don't know. Is Nadine, it's more of just having her first sexual experience with Randall Fly. Did they go into to the idea of having a kid with him until it actually happens in The Stand? I can't remember.
I believe so. Yeah. I don't think
she's told she's supposed to bear the whatever.
Yeah.
Dark Prince. I don't know what they call it, but I believe that is part of what she knows is coming.
Mm-hmm. It's interesting because I feel like with Mia, and maybe it's because she's this elemental, right? She's not really human. there's not as much dread and worry about it until later in the game. Whereas like Nadine, you kind of feel like she's doomed from the very start. And Nadine almost does it because it's her destiny, and it's this kind of dark attraction to Flag. Like, I mean, it's something I love about the stand, how she's sort of like resigned to, yeah, that's what I'm going to do. And then it brings up lots of good arguments about free will versus destination.
I mean, she's still one of my favorite characters in the stand because of that tension. And it is interesting to see it manifest in Mia as well. I think they have but they're both in similar ways used by people who are bigger. You know, they're not necessarily patsies, but it is something that comes to mind. It's the idea of being promised something and being so, blinded by your desire for that thing that you don't realize you're being used. And those characters, I always feel an intense amount of sympathy for.
Yes.
People who are, they, what is the phrase that that Susannah uses? The idea of someone who has hope but no choices. I can't remember the exact
Isn't it called something hope or
no? It's like ka something or other.
Kame. Kame.
Yeah,
that means
I remember because it looks like Mia.
Yeah, it means Ka's fool. So.
Yeah, it's Kamea, chameleon.
Yeah, see, I think Ka's with Mia, fool. Yeah, go ahead.
I was gonna say with Mia though, it's the thing that's kind of tragic about her is, it's like the baker who's never eaten cake. Her whole life is about fucking, but she can't produce a child, right? The very thing that comes out of having sex, she'll never know. So she's almost like, Moses. He can see the promised land, but he's not allowed to go into it. So then when she actually finally does want to cross over, it's kind of sad because that Flag is just taking advantage of all of this. And he even kind of tells her, he's like, the exchange you're making is like not it's not even worth what you're giving up for this.
She kind of looks like Nadine, right? Like she has that raven dark hair and slender. She's like has the nice ass, which I believe is commented upon a few times with Nadine. Yeah, I think she's very annoying for a long time and then starts to be slightly more interesting as she gets more aware of the place that she's put both herself and Susannah.
Yeah, and it does, I think, comment on notions of free. I mean, obviously with the, hope with no choice kind of idea is something that's really interesting because we're kind of left with that question near the end of the book of what have I done was a terrible question. What else could I have done was perhaps even worse. And it's that idea of like, was I doomed to this forever? Because she's somebody who was born out of the Prim, was left to wander, couldn't leave Fedek, no matter how hard she tried, wasn't allowed to enter the circle of anyone who had children. And then, was kind of just wandering around until Walter came up and said, hey, I can give you a baby. And, that to me is just, I don't know, it's extremely tragic and it just makes me very sad. And I think I developed just a really intense like sympathy for her near the end of the book. And because I think like when lonely people are used by opportunistic or evil people, it's just very, very sad. And it made me really love that character in ways that, I don't remember having that same reaction when I was younger. And if I'm being honest, I think we talked about this a little bit in our Wolves of the Kala episode, but I was very not interested in the Mia sections in that book. They were very grotesque and very over the top, and I wasn't connecting to that character. And here we just get so much dimension that I just really appreciated it. And I found her whole story, like her whole backstory, to be absolutely fascinating.
So it's fair to say you prefer Mamma Mia?
Sorry.
Maybe that's the song of the Susannah.
That's good.
Yeah. The whole Mamma Mia soundtrack is...
Here we go again. Hey.
So yeah, I don't know. Any other thoughts on Mia? Cool.
Hold on. I don't want to say. I think I would say this would spoil something from the next book, so I'm not going to say.
Okay.
We'll have more to say about her. I think later on.
I do think it's interesting we get a little bit more of Walter here. I remember when I first read the books, I was always wanting more Flag in all of these books. And we get some really fun, I think, tantalizing glimpses of Flag as Walter here. And I don't know. I really, really enjoyed some of that. Hold on. I'm going to read a little section here because I just find him such an interesting character. Mia was quiet, once more gathering the threads of her story. Then she said, Walter saw me. Not like other men. Even the ones I fucked to death only saw what they wanted to see, or what I wanted them to see. I made some of them die thinking they were fucking their own mothers. You should have seen their faces. But Walter saw me. What did he look like? Susannah asked. Hard to tell, Susannah. He wore a hood, and inside it he grinned. Such a grinning man he was, and he palavered with me. There. No mark on his forehead, though? Nay, I'm sure not, for he's not one of what Per Callahan calls the low men. Their job is the breakers and no more. Susannah began to feel anger then, although she tried not to show it. Mia had access to all her memories, which meant all the innermost workings and secrets of their quartet. It was like discovering you'd had a burglar in the house who had tried on your underwear as well as stealing your money and was going through your most personal papers. It was awful. Walter is, I suppose, what you'd call the Crimson King's prime minister. He often travels in disguise and is known in other worlds under other names, but always he is a grinning, laughing man. Susannah says, I met him briefly. I hope to meet him again. She says, if you truly knew him, you'd wish for no such thing. I don't know. I love getting this different perspective on Walter from this, I don't know, completely different, chaotic character.
Do you think Flag is, maybe not sympathetic's not the right word. Does he come off a little warmer in the Dark Tower series than he does in The Stand to you?
Well, what do you mean by warm?
Well, I don't know. I'm also thinking of his appearances in other sort of tangential Dark Tower books later on. Just maybe it's this, because I think he's trying to manipulate worlds that aren't our own. Maybe it just feels a little bit more alien, and I don't know, maybe I'm not as invested in whether or not, maybe, like The Stand opens with pretty much all of our country getting wiped out, right? And then Flag's a big part of that, and then he's kind of picking over everything and trying to lead to further destruction. I guess in the Dark Tower books, he almost comes off to me just more like playing and having a good time a little bit, I guess. I
like when he packs them lunches after Lud, right? And he leaves like a note.
He's still a bad dude. But
no, I know what you mean. I think
it's more of the trickster character a little bit, I guess. Yeah. Maybe that's what I'm thinking.
That's because I think we have bigger villains, right? We have bigger, stronger, more evil villains. This is a world filled with house demons that fuck you. Like Randall Flagg is sort of this opportunistic trickster character who is also not the big bad, and I think that is what makes him a little bit more impish in these.
Impish is a great word. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and I think it's because there are people that are bigger than him, or stronger and more powerful or whatever, but I think the thing is we never get the vibe that he's a loyal soldier to the Crimson King. We get the vibe that he is a chaotic presence, I think.
It's the softer side of Randall Flagg.
Well, it's not that. It's that he is a wild
more low-key
right?
and less Satan.
Yeah, exactly.
Right?
Yeah, he's having some fun.
He doesn't have a specific plan to kill the world that we know.
Yes, exactly.
And I think what's interesting too is that he's always the one who's kind of in charge of impregnating. You know what I mean? If you think about The Stand and this, it's the idea of like that his task almost is creating in some way the demon child, or, and so it makes me wonder, was he also trying to birth? I don't think this is something King thinks about, especially reading those quotes from the intro. He's like, I don't know, whatever, but it's like, it does make me think like, is that what was inside Nadine? Was it Mordred? You know what I mean? And it's an interesting question to turn over, at least for me, because Flag is the one who directly impregnates her in The Stand, whereas here it's hermaphrodite demons. So
it's Roland / hermaphrodite. It's very complicated in this one.
Let's talk King. King as a character. Dan, what are your thoughts?
All right, well, let's talk about this, because I think we talked about how he actually presents himself, I think, quite well when he's interacting with his own characters. I really love the portrayal we get of him in this story. But let's talk about that coda, because now here's the thing. I think he could have just had the coda being Stephen King dead or whatever. I think that having that newspaper article would have been the perfect, like, whoa, and also a good segue into this next book. My problem is, know what these journal entries remind me of? All right. Hopefully this isn't too much of a tangent. You know that movie Sleepaway Camp, the old Flash movie? Mm-hmm. I don't remember if you remember the VHS, or no, if you remember the VHS box.
It used to scare the hell out of me.
Well, it's really scary. And so essentially it's like a knife with a bloody tennis shoe on it. And then there's a letter behind it that's like, Dear Mom and Dad, camp is really scary. Someone's getting killed. oh wait, I think there's someone at the door. And so it's scary, but then when you think about it, it's a little silly because like why would you keep
Why
writing?
would you write down?
You know, and it's just so exposition based, and that's how these entries.
It's like that Shaq tweet where he goes, that's me screaming.
Yeah, no, exactly. Because and it seemed on one hand you could go, oh, it's kind of cool how we're sort of following his career. On the other hand, it just felt so Easter eggy in like the lamest way, and even certain things of like, oh yeah, I had to hop on my motorcycle and go. There were times where
he loves to talk about his Harley.
I know, yeah, and you know me, man. I'm no fan of the biker culture, but no, and it was like he went from having this really thoughtful, vulnerable, empathetic, like likable portrayal of himself, and then just undercutting it with some of the, in my opinion, most ham-fisted writing that we've seen of him. And I hate that we end on that because I actually love the cliffhanger we end on with the pregnancy. Like that's like, it's just, you're like, oh, what's going to happen next? And then we just have to, and once again, I think the next thing would just be that newspaper article. And it goes on for so long. It just felt so winky at the audience and like fan servicey in a way that I don't feel like he usually does. So yeah, I know that shouldn't color my feelings of the book so much, but it's the last thing we read. It was just like, yeah, Anna, what were you going to say about it?
Just none of it needs to be there. None of it.
Yeah, agreed.
Even the stuff that I like, which is that apparently he sponsors people, which is really cool. Like, I love that. That's like being way into the AA program, right? Like for him to be doing service work and sponsoring other men. I could have found that out somewhere else. Like, I mean, like, you know, and even he's talked about his sobriety so much more eloquently and so much more interestingly in other places. Yes. This is just like a blow by blow recount of his career. Like, does anyone reading this need to know the genesis of the Bachman books? No. Like, this is like, it's just what everyone reading this knows all of this.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, I've seen people call it like an extension of On Writing in a way.
No,
but it's not. It's like I think too, because he's
off writing,
and the tone too. The tone is just so. It's like filled with all these exclamation points, and even when he's like, "Wow, I picked up the Dark Tower again," it's as if it's just coming through. I mean, it's just so. It's so crass. I feel like in a way that, and once again, coming off of like him pulling off this magnificent literary feat that so many other authors fail at when they try to write themselves into their novels. And I mean, it's kind of funny though too. Like, like I don't know. I mean, it was also I wrote the motorcycle part. I was like, all right, Steven. Like,
see, I didn't mind it.
At least he didn't write about it being in a band, right? At least he didn't be like, and we played
like,
with the Rock
me and the Rock
Remainders the other night.
Wow, Amy was really tearing it up on bass or whatever.
Just set list. Yeah, no, I think there had to be something after the birth, right? And I think you're right. Maybe the article of him being killed would have been enough. I didn't mind the journal. Like, I thought it was kind of funny. You know, it's kind of like the falling tension, I guess, of after all we had been through with the birthing scene. But yeah, it was a little weird. But I did like how he describes his character. Because he talks about having like big crooked teeth, and like Roland observes he's like, wow, he has a goofy laugh and he's slightly overweight. And I also like there's like a Michael Scott quality to King that I really find endearing, where he always says like a little folksy thing, and like when they're like, tell us your story, and he's like, si, senor, and it's like, well, you could have just said yes, like you didn't have to do that. And at one point he's like, he's like, well, my religion told me not to laugh at guys holding guns, and like you could just see they're like, why does he have to turn everything into like a phrase?
It's also like, did you really say that, Steve?
Yeah, and he says like backwards, but I just think it's fun. Like I think it's very lovable, and
yeah.
But he seems to be poking fun of himself for being that. Yeah, like
I think that's it. Like, and you can just see that Roland's almost getting like impatient. But I thought it was cool when he says that Roland kind of looks like him. Like,
yeah, that was interesting.
That was a weird thing.
Because I never would have thought that.
Yeah, because you think more like Clint Eastwood, and then when I was rereading it, I was like, oh, I forgot that he kind of. And what's he call him? Like big, tall, and ugly.
Long, tall, and ugly.
Or long, tall, and ugly, right? And that's like Stephen King is like very tall, and it's kind of him like making fun of his own appearance, I guess.
Well, I think about those pictures of Stephen King from when he was really young and really skinny, and that's sort of what I think about for Roland. Not that particular expression. I know the picture you're talking about where he's like pretending to like scare you or something. But if you could think about a picture of Stephen King from his early career where he has a serious expression, never smiles, like I think that could be Roland.
Yeah. Well,
imagine him staying really slim and staying, bitter. And I think you get someone that looks like Roland.
And even to the way he dressed back then, because he was super in chambray shirts, jeans, cowboy boots, like, and that tall, lanky King. I can definitely see that.
Like Edmund Kemper, the serial killer.
Edmund Kemper. I don't know if I know Edmund Kemper.
He's like really tall. He's in what was that David Fincher Netflix show?
Oh, Mindhunter.
Yeah, he's in Mindhunter.
He does look good. Yeah, he looks like
he looks very like 70s King.
Yeah, I love 70s King. I was going to say, too, I like that we go back to this era of King because he could have just brought them back. Well, I guess it would have had to have been the 70s because of all the New York business with Andolini and everything. But I like that we capture him successful, but just starting to get fame in a way, because I think that allows him to poke more fun at himself. And I like that it's I'm sure he was drinking a lot at that point, but yeah, like pre-addiction. I just think it's a transitional book, so capturing him at a transitional space in his life just seems like a good move, right? Like if they had done it when he lived in the big Gothic house in Bangor or whatever it is, like that would have been, I don't know, just would feel a little bit broader, you know? Yeah. But I mean, overall, I really love King as a character in this. But the end part we get isn't even, it feels like not King as a character.
You lose that.
Like,
you lose that goofiness and that willingness to poke fun at himself, and instead it becomes like weird Easter egg and also forced, because I don't get the feeling, like, I know because he's talked about it, like he is in AA and he does have a higher power, and I do believe like he's got sort of a sense of like the universe having a benevolent force, right? But I don't think he's really very, he's not a believer. He doesn't believe in ghosts and goblins and things that go bump in the night, right? So this whole, like, I felt like it was something was pushing against me as I tried to create, like,
I think that's where that's where the fictionalized aspects.
And like it makes me it maybe it's just because I know his other writing so well, and I know that's like just not something that the real Stephen King would ever really say, like, or think. I don't think, unless there's a part of him that he's never revealed that really is kind of superstitious, maybe. But what was I going to say about the likableness of the King? When Roland and Eddie are talking about whether or not they should intervene on his drinking, that's a very like, no, he has to hit his own bottom kind of like, no, we have to let him sort it out on his own. I liked that.
Yeah, no, that was fun. Okay, cool. Let's move on to our next section.
One last character just to throw in.
Oh, yeah,
I think is worth mentioning quickly is the John Cullum character.
Oh, yeah. He was great.
Yeah, and it's weird because he's almost too like perfect. Like he senses everything. It's a little bit of Ghost in the Machine or whatever. But it is funny that like he used to be a state prison guard at Shawshank. It's implied. He kind of almost can read them. Like he's there to move the story forward. I get it. But even like when Roland is smoking the cigarette, he's like, "This tastes like nothing." And John like leans over, snaps the filter off, gives it back, and then just keeps talking to Eddie. And it's just like this guy is like there to solve all of their problems so quickly. It felt a little weird for me.
Well, they teased that he could be trouble because Eddie was like nagged by something the guy said, and I do not remember if that guy comes back in the next book. So I'm genuinely intrigued by it.
Can't remember either. I was gonna say, do you think it's a coincidence that his initials are JC? Because I feel like because it feels like a little bit of a and a little bit of a Christ character.
No, that character was fun.
Yeah, he was fun. Yeah. Who are the other? What are the other? I guess there's no new. I mean, you get the gangsters coming back, but there's.
I mean, there's go ahead.
I got one. The woman who gets her shoes stolen.
Oh, Trudy Damascus.
I actually like her.
I thought I liked her a lot. That was a nice little like.
She's one of those characters that sometimes comes up in a King novel, like sort of walks on, has a scene, and then kind of like leaves again. But I'm curious about her, and she's one of the better lines in the book too, where she's like, "The city is full of shoes, but not so much your sanity." Like, the city is full of shoes is such a wonderful line.
Yeah.
Well, I was just cracking up at like her last name being Damascus, like because she's literally like Paul on the road to Damascus, and then a vision manifests ahead of her.
Sorry, man. Damascus, Jesus.
I was like, all right, buddy.
Well, it's funny because I think part of why I like her appearance, even though it's very brief, is because it's really one of the only times that we get the perception of these characters from someone who's not from Midworld or directly involved in this quest, right? That's really fun, I think. I mean, Cullum a little bit, but Cullum is so keyed into what they're doing that you don't get that. I like getting this kind of outsider's perspective of like, oh, this is how deranged Mia / Susannah must look. Like if we saw her walking down the street, right? Yeah, I enjoyed that quite a bit. I thought it was fun. There I think in book 7, there's a couple more little side characters like that encounter. There's one I remember that encounters Roland that's interesting. So yeah,
Kingsley's so good at those, just like these little one-off characters that pop up, and we don't get a ton in the Dark Tower, so it is fun when we get one. So the only other character I was thinking about was Richard Sayre. There's probably not much to say about him, but I thought I spent the whole book thinking he was the same character from the story Everything's Eventual, that is like basically Dinky Earnshaw's boss, but it's not. Well, he at least just has a different name, but it's the same function, I think. You know, big wig of the low men. So, okay.
Oh, and it is Deep New. You guys are right, Aaron. Deep New.
Hell
no,
yeah.
not Deepen. I got it wrong.
You dumb fucker. Okay, let's move on to the next section. It's called Misery.
She died. She just slipped away.
Slipped away! Slipped away! She didn't just slip away! You did it! 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 You murdered my Misery!
Eddie!
Here in Misery, we talk about the stuff we hated. Should we all just talk about the scene with the Japanese tourists now?
Oh god, it goes on so long too.
I know.
Like,
it's so weird because, you know, I like to give grace in moments like this because I do think critics can often neglect to you know, understand that sometimes it's a character's perspective that is saying insensitive things, and characters sometimes do that, and that doesn't necessarily mean it's the author. But if it's Mia being confused by all of these people, why does she have all the exact same stereotypes that are portrayed in American media of like Asian tourists? So it's just really bizarre and kind of mean, like in a weird way. And then there's also a weird Asian joke in like the very end. Do you remember where the machine asks Susannah what her name is and she says, "Fuck you." And they're like, and the machine is like, we don't recognize that name from a non-Asian person. It's like,
I
have to do that.
I underlined that. Yeah. And also there's the usual fat phobia stuff that you get from King, you know, like at the Dixie Pig. Like
oh yeah.
Well, they are people who are,
yeah.
They're obese. And then there's someone else that's obese too. Like, oh, well, Cal Tower.
Oh yeah.
Just, he gets described in really gross ways again. Like he was already got the fat phobia going in the last book, but
I think
comes up again. Even
aside from the fat phobic part with Calvin Tower, we said this last episode. I'm just so not interested in the real estate negotiations. I'm just again, come on, we get it. That mission just, it really feels like it. He was saying, man, we really need,
Oh, the whole thing, yeah.
We need something. We need something for them to do. So let's just.
Oh, you guys talk about your post-structuralism grad school. I want to talk about real property and jurisprudence. I was so excited. The articles of incorporation have "oi." I'm like, wait, an animal owning a corporation? I'm like, they can only own property and trust.
I'll say this.
Thomas Aquinas argued that animals have souls.
Yeah, we're talking about natural law versus positivism here. So.
I was going to mention this earlier when I was talking about, you know, the idea of technology and the end of things. And I do think that there is something kind of wry and funny about, and also prophetic, obviously, about the idea that like these demonic forces would basically balloon into one giant monolithic corporation. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And the idea that they have is, oh, we need to break up the corporation. We need to buy up Positronics before they merge with the Sombra Corporation so they don't become too big. And it's like, yes, break up the tech companies.
And I agree. I think just because they're trying to get him to do one thing across two books, and ultimately he's not that important of a character. You know what I mean? And so I think it's just like it's just a weird thing to have in a quest narrative. Like, man, we really got to convince this guy to sell. We really got to get those
articles of incorporation settled. And I know it's like it's so like they do literally have a legal contract is like a really tense scene in this book. Like
an illustration.
It's very strange. You know, like they could have made it about something. Like I do get the tension of Cal whatever Tower, like not giving up a thing that's important to him, and sort of this. I actually liked. Eddie seeing a fellow addict in Tower, and then talk about mania, right? Like that's a theme in this series. But I really wish it wasn't about a legal document.
Exactly. Yeah. It just
Really wish maybe it was like a particular book he had to give up.
Yeah, exactly.
You know?
It just feels like more tied to the what we're to
unless
to a book.
Although again, would have all been solved if he had Donald Trump as a character.
Oh God.
Oh man, has Trump come up at all? I mean, Bryce.
We
Nelson
talked about it in the last episode about how they should have just made this Trump.
I mean, Bryce Nellis has a very prophetic depiction of Trump in American Psycho. That was obviously way before any of that happened. I was gonna ask y'all, how do you feel about? I don't dislike Callahan or Jake or Oy as characters, but how do you feel about their storyline? I just feel like they're kind of treading water.
They felt like kind of the least. Yeah, they kind of felt like the least important of the 3 missions that were going down.
Yeah,
it was kind of interesting when Black 13 was like going to make them kill each other or whatever, and then the maid shows up or something. I don't know. It was a weird scene. And
that's
then
that's a good scene.
Yeah, it's pretty good, but it's like but then I just was cracking up in my morbid way. And this was in my misery section, is basically them putting Black 13 in lockers beneath the World Trade Center and being like, well,
that'll take care of it.
Yeah, no, as long as it doesn't collapse.
Hopefully the building will collapse.
I know what's funny though. I remember reading this book when it came out and thinking that was so cool. I'm like, whoa, yeah, 9/11.
It was one of the first times I feel like I saw 9/11 referenced in art, at least in that kind of way.
And not in a way, because we talked about I mean, there's lots written on pop culture in the wake of 9/11, but I felt like most of the pop culture regarding 9/11 up until this point was very jingoistic. It was very like, we'll put a boot in your ass. And I think it was cool at the time to see it used in this sort of just little, like it's a kind of tangential way. But I think, 9/11 is always going to be a hard sell in anything, right? Unless you're really like investigating it or
too
something.
soon.
Like when you think of like the cleanup after, and you're like, when they were like pausing to remove like victims, and you're like, with Black 13, because like they're like, oh, if the building collapses on it, we'll never find it. It's like, no, they pretty thoroughly cleaned it up. Like it might have been discovered at that point, but
it's Black 13 that caused like the cancers and other
exactly. It's Jon Stewart is up there protesting for Black 13. Like.
if they ever made the Stephen King Cinematic universe like we suggested a while ago, the end credits scene after this would be a fireman like cleaning up 9/11 rubble, being like, "Hey boss, what's this?" Cleaning it up, and then it cuts to black.
But no, because he does this again in Dr. Sleep. Yeah. He basically insinuates that Abra caused 9/11, which is right at the beginning of the book, so it's not a spoiler.
No, they didn't say caused it. They say they knew it. It's like they knew it was coming, right?
I feel like there's room to wiggle around there.
Okay,
at least from what I remember.
Oh, wait, are we doing misery?
We're in misery.
I was gonna say I have a one sentence. You go first. I just have one sentence. I read.
Yeah. This is, I should have done this in the King portion maybe, and this is like to call it misery is maybe a little strong, but when King says, but I get to do a mail drop, or I like get to play mailman, he puts it in this really kid way. Right, and then he leaves a note for Jake, and it's just pointless. It's just like what like what is happening there, and I don't know, it just annoyed me. And maybe it's just like it shows like just how pointless that whole section is. Although I like Father Callahan sort of mulling his weakness with Barlow. Like I like him sort of
that's cool.
That's a good paragraph. That's actually a nice little sort of thing about faith, that he was defeated by Barlow not because he held on to it. It's a nice little line. I'll look it up while we're talking about misery.
This is in the very beginning of the book. Just because last time in Wolves of the Calla we talked about getting burnout on some of the fantasy talk gobbledygook terms, and there's not much of it in this book. I guess outside the songs, but in the very beginning where they're still in Colburn and Sturgis, I think this Callahan is talking. No, it's not. It's one of the Mani. Either way, it's someone from Calla talking. And so, listen, young man. Cantab and I can be back at Redpath Croton well before dark. Then we'll call our menfolk to the Tempa, which is to us the meeting hall is to the forgetful folk. I was just like, Jesus Christ, like, what the fuck is he talking about?
That sentence is a nightmare.
Yeah, no, it was the only one like that, but it just stood out to me. I'm like, man, it's like 5 proper nouns, fantasy nouns in a row.
I hated this sentence. If Detta Walker was back, pumped up and ready to cut butt, that was in large part this unwelcome stranger's doing. Cut butt? No. Absolutely not.
Very folksy way of saying kick ass, I guess.
Yeah, kick ass, cuck butt.
Okay. That's all I have in Misery. Although I have a question. There's this whole, seen this in other stuff. Like somebody's like, oh, I have indigestion. That's why I'm like seeing a ghost or something. Is that a thing? Like you ate? Oh, I ate
It's
some
in
Christmas Carol.
It's in The Night Before Christmas.
Is that a real thing?
I think so. Yeah, because in Christmas Carol, he says,
or Christmas Carol. Yeah, Night Before Christmas.
No, but I
he's
mean, in real life, like if I eat something before
that's like
bed,
an old wives' tale kind of, because like the Simpsons, they're like, oh, don't eat too much candy or you'll have nightmares. I think it's just one of those
exactly.
ways.
I believe it's supposed to be after you go to sleep. It's not like it's supposed to cause bad dreams.
Like,
and I do think there is something to like having a bad meal and having an upset stomach and then having bad dreams. I do think there's something there.
Well, dreams
not
is one thing. I was getting vibes that it was actual ghosts.
No, it is. Was Ebenezer Scrooge say? He's like, oh, he's like
or ghosts are drawn to upset stomachs.
He says like, oh,
ghosts love diarrhea.
He tells Jacob Marley, oh, you're just like the cause of a blob of mustard, some undigested bread, and then he's like, he says there's more of gravy than the grave about you, and then that's always what I remember.
Yet he orders a goose as soon as he wakes up. All right, so
all right, okay.
King loves that. He's actually used that a couple times before, like I think in other books. Yeah,
he's also used fuckery, but we'll mention that in King's Dominion.
Right.
Okay.
Well, I have a misery too.
Okay, hit me.
I won't come in your mouth or get any in your hair.
Yeah.
Oh, there goes my
I
pound
think
cake.
anytime Detta talks, I'm just deeply uncomfortable.
I actually don't have any pound cake now, man.
Like I guess that's it. Yeah, there's blessedly little pound cake for a book that has a pregnancy.
Yeah, I've only got pregnancy. 1 or 2, but okay. Word processor of the gods. Let's go.
And we're gonna make a new rule. Whenever I'm in here, you hear me typing. Whether you don't hear me typing, whether the fuck you hear me doing in here, when I'm in here, that means that I am working. That means don't come in. Now, do you think you can handle that?
Yeah.
Fine. Why don't you start right now and get the fuck out of here?
Here in Word Processor of the Gods, we talk about sections of writing we really liked. Anybody want to kick us off?
I'll just do one that sounded cool and like less deep, but just I think I like the way it came off. And this is from Callahan, but he says, This is a city stuffed with sin and sick with transgression, the preacher said at last. Sodom on the half-shell, Gomorrah on a graham cracker, ready for the God bomb that will surely fall from the skies. Say hallelujah, say sweet Jesus, and gimme amen. But this right here is a good place. A good place. Can you boys feel it? So I like the colloquial, I don't know, the Gomorrah on a graham cracker, but also the God bomb, I thought, with the connection to the stand was kind of fun.
Yeah, King's having a blast writing that section, you can tell.
I won't read anything from it because it's a long section, but I was really moved by where he talks about Eddie loving Lord of the Rings and the Hobbits and his brother making fun of him for it. I feel like King always talks about the influence of Lord of the Rings on his characters.
Yeah.
But I never get sick of it. I think it's a book that means a lot to him, and I'm someone who loves Lord of the Rings, so I was just drawn to it. But also this idea that Eddie felt kind of embarrassed that he liked it, and his brother was teasing him for it. I just thought I could relate to that so much. And I just, when you're a kid, to have something that you're so into and people just razzing you for it. I'm just always a big fan of when we get to see Henry Eddie flashbacks. And I think too, because in this one, I feel like the scales fall from Eddie's eyes the more the books progress when he thinks back on Henry. Like he sees him more for the kind of, I mean, he loves him obviously, but I think also sees him for the kind of like loser that he is, like the anti-intellectual loser. So I just thought that section was really lovely. It was probably my favorite like piece of writing from the book. I actually like the prose a lot in this. It's not like I had a ton of, like, for me the issue is more the story moves and that end section with King than it is like writing style or something like that.
Yeah, there's a lot of wacky writing in this, but I like it. Like, I wrote this section down, which I really liked. Before he could scream his fury, the door slapped open again. This time he was dazzled by hazy sunshine loaded with birdsong. He smelled pine trees and heard the distant backfiring of what sounded like a big truck. Then he was sucked up into that brightness, unable to yell that this was fucked up, ass backwards. Something collided with the side of Eddie's head. For one brief moment, he was brilliantly aware of his passage between the worlds, then the gunfire, then the killing. And that's the end of a chapter, and I thought that was pretty badass. And then I have another section that was, to me, just kind of silly, but I appreciated it. It had like a big action movie climax feel. And it's after Callahan gives Jake like last rites, like praise over him. And then they're talking about going into Dixie Pig, and Callahan says, "I'll shoot until the bullets are gone or I'm dead. If I run out of bullets before they kill me, I'll club them with the gun butt." And then Jake says, "Good, let's go give them some last rites." And then you can just think of them like cocking the guns and going in.
Still a Western, you know?
I love it. It was just like kind of big action movie kind of shit that made me laugh. How about you, Anna?
I'll toss in this section I referred to before where Callahan's sort of thinking back on Barlow. "Sad to see a man's faith fail," the vampire Kurt Barlow had said, and then he plucked Don Callahan's dark and useless cross from his hand. Why had he been able to do that? Because, behold the paradox, consider the riddle. Father Callahan had failed to throw the cross away himself, because he had failed to accept that the cross was nothing more but one symbol of a far greater power, one that ran like a river beneath the universe, perhaps beneath 1,000 universes. "I'd need no symbol," Callahan thought, and then, "Is that why God let me live? He was giving me a second chance to learn that?" It was possible, he thought, as his hand settled in the lid of the box. Second chances were one of God's specialties.
That's great.
I like that. Can I do one? Just because I feel like I quote Court in every episode so far. I love Court's little lessons, but it talks about the idea of like pain cluttering your judgment, and he quotes, Roland quotes him, "Pain rises from the heart to the head. Pain rises." I think that's nice to keep in mind, just that it can.
I like
your
that
judgment.
too. I actually underlined that. I thought that was.
You got to catch it in your teeth.
Yeah. I just think Court.
Yeah.
For as big of a dickhead as he is, like he still has such an impact that Roland's always quoting him. So he's a teacher that Roland loved.
Awesome. Next section: cemetery.
What's the bottom of the truth? Well, sometimes that is better. The person you put up there ain't the person that comes back. It may look like that person, but it ain't that person. Because whatever lives in the ground beyond that cemetery ain't human at all.
Here in the cemetery, we talk about the stuff that freaked us out. I'm curious, Anna, when you say you didn't like the ending, were you not a fan of any of the Dixie Pig stuff?
So, for someone that loves horror, I can get grossed out a little pretty easily, and I don't like to dwell on the grossness. Like, one of the things I think Stephen King often does well is like you just get a little like peek inside. You get a glimpse of something super, super gross and scary, and then you kind of like go on to the more suspenseful stuff, right? And I just felt like this happened too with in Wolves of the Calla with Mia's eating, right? Like it just dwells in like how disgusting this is, and I feel like the Dixie Pig has some of that in it. Like it's just like I feel like it's just like a lot of different.
Like grotesqueries almost.
They're grotesquerie, and it doesn't do it for
like
me.
elites eating babies.
Yeah.
Baby rotisserie.
Yeah,
baby rotisserie, and also the masks with the cracking skin, and I was going to say maybe some virus.
Yeah. Is
with
that
red
Kingston
fuzzy
Minion?
Skin?
No, yeah. I was laughing so hard because I'm like, this is literally what Pizzagate people are afraid of. Only it's not in the basement of a pizzeria. It's literally like high society people who are secretly demons eating babies and drinking blood. So
yeah, the thing is that's real.
It is. King's shown it to us.
Yeah.
How else are you gonna get that adrenochrome? Yeah.
Yeah. That's when they dip their cups in the drippings.
Yeah, that's the drippings. That was one that I highlighted. Yeah. That was so gross. The drippings. Ugh.
I kind of. I mean, I'm a real freak. So
I am too.
Also the insects in that. Ooh.
For me, I think because the book is once again very transitional. We're kind of like, okay, where are we going toward? It almost felt like a cathartic scene for me. It was like, okay, I've delayed the goods for this whole time, so now I'm just gonna go turn up to 11 and go maximum king. I really loved the Dixie Pig sequence, I was super unnerved by it, and it's very creepy crawly, but I don't know, for me it was like we hear so much about it the whole time and we wonder what it's going to be, and it very much paid off for me. Even just the way he was describing the red circles on the heads like bleeding, and everything's cracking and peeling, and big fan over here.
I think we have similar sensibility. Like I love the Dixie Pig section, but the description too of like the long pork, and that's what human flesh is supposed to taste like, pork compared to any other meat. So like when Eddie walks in, he's kind of like sniffing around, and you're like, oh, you wonder if it would smell like pig too. And the fact that they had like the grandfathers, which are sort of like the older type 1 vampires there enjoying it. And I hadn't really thought about it, but once Randall mentioned like the baby consumption conspiracy theories now with like Pizzagate, you're like, oh yeah, this is like spot on for some of these probably theories that existed back then.
The trope of like elites eating babies.
Yeah, but I just like the first time I read this book, I don't think
old.
this is that was not something I picked up on, I guess, back the first time I read that. But now you're like, wow, yeah, it seems like so much more in the forefront of what we think of now in terms of eating babies with power elites and stuff.
Yeah, I just want to read.
I believe it's in the Protocols of Zion.
Yeah,
I mean, like,
yeah, I guess that's true. But
this little
I was gonna say, it just reminded me of like the titty twister though from like Dusk Till Dawn. Like,
oh yeah, it's
just
so
seeing like the
ridiculous.
decorations on the wall and all
that.
the madness happening.
Sitting at a long wooden table beneath a blazing crystal chandelier were perhaps a dozen men and women, their apple doll faces twisted and shrunken with age and evil. Their lips had burst back from a great croggled banquet or bouquets of teeth. The days when any of these monstrosities could close their mouths were long gone. Their eyes were black and oozing some sort of noisome, tarry stuff from the corners. Their skin was yellow, scaled with teeth, and covered with patches of diseased-looking fur. He's going off.
I love it.
It's just like off.
We talked about this in From a BOK, and also just with how far he like you think he's gonna stop and he keeps going.
He loves
it. I just picture him like shooting hoops and just like sinking everyone. Like, oh yeah, I'm just
boom.
I'm just
boom,
doing it, man.
boom.
I'm doing it. That's I kind of like it when it's funny. I don't like it when he does this. He'll do that kind of thing sometimes with just like regular dialogue, and it'll oh my god, he could have said in 10 words what he says in 50, but I weirdly never mind it when it's with disgusting shit in his books. I'm always like, oh yeah,
more,
keep it coming.
Any other cemetery? It's not the scariest book. There's it's kind of all saved for the end. But yeah. Okay, let's pop over to the next section. Be very short one. Pound cake.
After all you've been taught, everyone in bad, Mama. Everything in the sin. Come to your closet and pray. Ask to be forgiven.
He's a nice boy, Mom. You like him. You really like him, Mama.
The one I have right here is when it's just funny to me is when Susannah's looking at the baby and she says his little penis is like kelp or something like that. That and when Mia talks about like making men see their mothers before killing them during sex. I'm like, seems a little unnecessary. Seems a little rude. Do you guys have any others?
I don't have much. I mean, yeah, for all the sex and pregnancy, I mean, there's the cum for Kamala, I guess, but like, I don't know. I would not a big helping of pound cake.
There's two making water in your pants. There's two pee-pee in the pants, which I guess is her name Damascus, that woman in the beginning.
Oh yeah,
because after she gets kind of like mugged, gets her shoes took, she like has to go to the office and change her clothes because she's wet them. And then when Stephen King faints, when he gets up, he also has to change his pants because he made water in them.
That's pretty impressive.
I missed that.
I would never rate myself pissing myself if I wrote myself into something.
I'm kind of surprised he didn't rate himself like shitting himself. Yeah. Like, oh, he shot the chocolate when he passed out. Yeah, he hit the floor and shot.
I was gonna say, like, this is one of the first King books in ages where there's been no shit. So that's pretty impressive. Although if I trawled the Dixie Pig, there might be some shit there.
Spoiler alert! I don't think this is too much of a spoiler. Lots of shit and farts in the next book.
All right,
I don't know if you guys remember.
Up for it.
It's very prominent. That's it. Yeah, we go long, like throughout the almost like half the book. Get ready, guys.
Hell yeah, I can't wait. Okay, anything before we head over to King's Dominion? All right.
There's another world out there. I know there is.
King's Dominion. I can rattle off some of these. As you said, the whole book's kind of King's Dominion. But
yeah, just say everything. Everything's included now. It's all there.
But there were some interesting ones. I'm just going to run through my list here. The idea of a death bag. They see a death bag over Stephen King, like this little kind of black shroud that kind of hangs over him. That reminded me of Insomnia. And
Insomnia.
Yeah.
Don't they call it?
They
use
the exact same term, right?
Yeah,
I
but
think so.
that was interesting because death bag in there meant you were like about to die, or at least from what I remember. I don't remember if it meant people were like cursed or anything, but regardless, because I remember he sees it over.
Oh, he's about to die though. I mean, like he does die later.
Oh yeah, I guess you're right. I take it back. Anna's right.
Yeah.
Okay. There's a mention of Whoopi Goldberg, page 349, would go on to star in the Stephen King adaptation of The Stand, CBS All Access. We were not fans of her performance. There's the Reverend Harrigan We just saw Mr. Harrigan's phone hit Netflix, also a story. No relation, seemingly. When they talked about Illyria, they mentioned little doctors, and I don't remember there being little doctors in the story.
Isn't it Insomnia?
I think the bugs.
Well, I'm saying in Insomnia, there's little doctors, but
no, but in Illyria, they call the insects the little doctors.
Oh, you're right. They do. Yeah,
I think they do. Yeah, I think so.
Well, I guess I forgot about the insects because I was thinking of little men in coats.
The little snip the face.
Page 205, Mr. Rob Lowe is mentioned. Had already starred in both. Well, Salem's Lot probably came out the same year as this, the one that he starred in. I think it was 2003, 2004. So obviously a King fan, Mr. Rob Lowe. We got to get him on the pod. Okay. What else do we have here? The way they talked about Toadash, it made me think of the Jaunt, like the idea of it, like there's these spaces in between worlds that are endless. That reminded me of, I don't know, what people might experience when they go through a Jaunt. Toadash. Mention of the Red Sox. His King's next book after these is Faithful, his book about the Red Sox with Stuart Onan. We're going to be hitting that in January, so buckle up. And obviously, I've teased this one, but Eddie says the phrase fuckery, which if you are a Dreamcatcher fan like us, then you are familiar with that phrase. I think he also used it in like Black House. I think he was really into that phrase.
What they talk about this in Dreamcatcher? What's the difference between a fuckaroo and a fuckery? Don't they go into that?
If they do, I do not remember.
Come on, Anna and Randall.
I think one of them is sort of good and the other's sort of bad. Like it's all craziness, right? Like it's like a circle jerk, I guess, to use another.
When he wrote it.
Yeah, I don't know. Like,
Okay.
I mean, I think actually, you know what? I think the joke is that there's not really a difference.
Yeah, right. Because doesn't Beaver say like,
Because he said he's like, this is a real fuckery, but it could be a fuckaroo or something like that.
I don't know. I just remember in Dreamcatcher at the end with the movie, the credits, where it just shows them all around the table again. There's like weird guitar music playing while they like silently enjoy the piano. It's very, very funny. Very funny.
Any other King's Dominion that you guys have, or did I hit them all? Dan,
I got a few. So Bridgeton, Maine is also referenced in Cujo, The Mist, Dreamcatcher, and Needful Things.
Boom.
Which I thought was kind of interesting. Obviously, we talked about John Cullum with the Shawshank Redemption, or the Jail Shawshank. One that really stands out, though, is the Kara Laughs, Sarah Laughs. Right? If you remember, if you remember in Bag of Bones, so there's a twinner. So in this one, it's Stephen King lives in the house. They call it Kara Laughs, right? Whereas in the sort of twinner, right? And what's the name of the author from Bag of Bones?
Noonan.
Mike Noonan. Yeah.
Mike
so
Noonan.
he lives in I keep going with Kara. Sarah Laughs, and he's sort of a twinner of King as well as an author. So I thought that was a pretty cool one.
In the Bag of Bones episode.
Yeah, figured we just throw that one in here, and then the final thing is just like obviously some of the dates. 19 gets used a lot, but in 11/22/63 they talk about the Vermont Yankee nuclear explosion, and it happens on June 19th, 1999, which is the same day that King got hit by the car in the book and in real life.
Interesting.
Hey, also 9/11. 2001, 20 minus 1 is what? 19.
I thought you were just going to use 9/11 as a King's Dominion.
Also that.
Hey, 9/11, 19. There we go.
19. Okay, cool. Let's give our final thoughts.
Dad, can we go now?
You ready?
Yeah, we've been ready for an hour.
Okay, I'll be right there.
You said that a half hour ago. Yeah, my dad's weird. He gets like that when he's writing.
All right. Caffrey, kick us off. Final thoughts, nose ranking.
I enjoyed this a lot more this time around. Once again, I think because I know what I see its purpose, I know what it's going toward. I still think there's some padding just as far as the various quests we have in this book, but I really love what the insight we get into Mia's psyche. It feels like something different and new for King. I actually feel like he's expanding what's already a pretty expansive character in Susannah. We've talked about loving the King stuff. I like him killing himself in the novel. I think that's such a bold way to end it. I just wish we could cut out the 15 pages before. It just really undercuts all the good stuff he's done. So even though it doesn't have the it's weird because I said it was breezy earlier, and it is breezy earlier in that it's like very readable to me, even though I think we're sort of in stasis a little bit for some of these journeys. So although it doesn't have the epic sweep of the next Dark Tower book and the Dark Tower as a series, I don't think it needs to. It feels I sort of like see the machinations a little bit more this time than I did when I was first reading it. So I will give it 3.5 bright red Pennywise clown noses. Now when I rate this on Goodreads, there's no half stars. I always go up. So if you see me giving it 4 stars, don't come at me. Don't say
you're very generous, Dan. Yeah. I love that about you.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, well, 3.5. Yeah, 3. You got to round up, right? That's like isn't that the rule of math?
It's a good rule. Anna, hit me with your clown nose ranking.
The rule of math. That's me. Yeah,
you're a lit major. Yeah.
And your final thoughts.
I think I liked this more than the first time I read it. Like, it's hard to say. It definitely, the relationship, I should say, between Susannah and Mia struck a chord more deeply in me than the first time I read it. It's hard to figure out. It's hard to do a rating for it because if you think, like, again, would you recommend this book? You can't recommend it to anyone who hasn't read all the other books.
Not a standalone. Yeah.
You know? So, I mean, I think you almost have to rank it just within the Dark Tower books. Mm-hmm. But I guess can we give half noses? Are we allowed to give half noses?
Totally. This is a good read.
So I guess well, I'm torn between See, I'm torn. I'm torn between 2.5 and 3.
Well, you got to round up. It's the rule of math.
It's the rule of math. That's true. I actually do think 0.5 you do round up. It's things below 0.5 that you round down.
Exactly.
You don't always round up. But yeah, I'll get round up to 3. It's again, I couldn't. If you think about stars as a recommendation, I can't recommend it. But it is. It's an interesting kind of interlude in the Dark Tower series, right? And that's what it feels like. It's like a little bit of a pause in some ways. Although it's a chase, there's so much metaphysical stuff happening.
I know exactly what you mean about it being a pause, because there is like those scenes with Susannah and Mia are like a pause because it's like, let's talk through some of this shit, you know? Pfleegor.
I think interlude is a very good way of kind of phrasing that, because I agree. This is a lot of the pieces being moved on the board, right? And when you watch chess or something, the middle game is not the most exciting if you're a spectator, but it's everything getting ready for the big finish. So this is the kind of story that I'd almost rather read as the comic books, just because I'm like, well, there's a lot of, let's form this corporation. Here's a land deed, and not the most exciting stuff to go through. Trying to think if I liked it more or less this time. I guess this is the one that I forgot the most from my first read through, so it was nice to kind of revisit and kind of pull that stuff out. I'm glad that it was shorter than the other ones. I could not imagine this book being 700 pages. For those reasons, I'm going to give it a 3.25. Because I also don't believe I don't agree with the rule of math. I think you should always grade lower.
I appreciate you using the quarter nose. It's a rare use on this pod. But okay, I give it 3.5 bright red Pennywise clown noses. I actually quite like this one. I liked it a lot more than I did on the first read, and a lot of it has to do with just, I think, spending really sitting with Mia in ways that I haven't previously. I think sometimes I breeze through a lot of the backstory, a lot of the, metaphysical justifications for how this pregnancy worked. And, that kind of stuff to me is not where I get enjoyment. But I think in the process of doing that, I was able to engage a little bit more with the ways in which Mia changes and the kind of differences between her and Susannah and what she eventually finds beautiful about Susannah, which to me was really enriching, and it made me really love the character of Susannah a lot more, I think, than I had already. And so, yeah, I think in terms of a character, this is really like a character book for me. It's really all about Susannah and deepening that character. All the other characters for me are really pushing forward the plot. And with her, it's like, no, let's sit back and talk about what it's like to have a demon baby in your belly and a woman possessing you. Interesting stuff. I don't know. I thought it was a cool book. I'm very interested in heading into the final book here. I've heard a lot. I remember I have very fond memories of it, but I've been seeing a lot of negative thoughts sort of on the Discord and elsewhere about this final book. So I don't know. I'm sure it's a mixed bag, but my memories are very spotty. But yeah, we'll be back next month with that episode. It'll probably be, long. We might break it up into 2. We'll see how it shakes out, but very, very excited to do it with this crew, my quartet. Let's just do some quick plugs before we leave. Anna, what's up with Space the Nation?
Space the Nation, my science fiction podcast where I talk about science fiction and politics and international relations with Dan Dresner. It is happening. We're in the middle of Butler-vember, doing the sci-fi films of Gerard Butler, which are mostly pretty bad, turns out.
Does he do a bunch of low budget directed?
No, we actually they're all huge budget. Which it's funny. So Gamer, Gods of Egypt, and
Greenland.
Greenland is actually the next one we're doing. Which
I
is
like
supposed to be
Greenland.
the best one. And then Geostorm.
I gotta see Geostorm. I've heard Geostorm's really bad.
Oh, it is the worst of the bad. Actually, what's interesting is Gamer is almost worth recommending.
I heard that. Yeah,
it's like. It misses me recommending it by just a little bit. Like if you're interested in video games and alternate and
am I
the questions raised by avatars and whatnot?
And isn't Michael C. Hall a
he
big
is, and
dandy
he's
in
fantastic.
It? Yeah,
he is actually the reason to watch it if you're going to watch it. He's really, really good. So Butler-vember is happening now, and then by the time people hear this, maybe our Andor second half of Andor episode is going to come out. And if you haven't watched Andor, that's my plug.
Yeah,
I know.
I'm a big fan.
So fucking good. It's not
watching-
just the best Star Wars; it is one of the best TV shows.
I love Tony Gilroy.
So good.
I'm watching
So
all
good.
the Star Wars stuff in canon chronological order right now, and so I want to get to Andor. I'm on Bad Batch, and it's taking me fucking forever to get through the Bad Batch.
Yeah, there's
It's a
9,000
cartoon.
episodes.
That's only 18. Well, and I watched all of Clone. I'm in cartoon land right now, and I like cartoons, but I want to get to Andor and
It's so
Rogue One and
good.
some of the other-
The
Andor
most
is-
recent episode, the episode 10 of Andor is probably one of the best TV episodes, best
Really?
45 minutes of TV I've ever seen.
Andor's got to be coming up for me though, because it's before Rogue One, right? Because he's the character from Rogue One, so hopefully I'll get to it
I love
soon.
these
but,
self-imposed rules as if you can't just jump ahead. At it.
Yeah, why don't you just watch it?
I'm a big boy. I can do what I want. Are you? I know it's not sci-fi. Are you guys gonna do the Gerard Butler movie, The Bounty Hunter, by any chance, or the?
Probably not. Because we're going to be done with Butler-vember. We are going to do April, which is the Michael Bay movies.
Oh, cool.
We're kind of coming up on our anniversary. We're probably going to do our third. Oh my God, third anniversary. That's how long we've been doing it. Anyway, if you like genre stuff, you'll probably like Space the Nation. I also write a column about sobriety for New York Magazine.
Nice. Dan Caffrey, what's up on Halloweenies?
Halloweenies, we just wrapped up our season on our 5th season on Evil Dead, and I don't think I know what we're doing next season, but I don't think we've announced it yet, so I probably can't say it. I think we told our Patrons, but it's I think it might be the largest season we've done, because I'll say it's sort of 2 interlocking series. I'll say that about it. Yeah, and I'm trying to think when I never know, because I never know when these. I mean, I know when this comes out, but I don't know how that syncs up with the Halloween's timeline. Just watch the socials, and yeah, you should see season 6 coming up soon.
Dan Pfleegor, when can we expect another Dark Tower detour?
We're trying to get one before the end of the year. So in the meanwhile, you can appease or sate your thirst with our Father, Son, and Holy Ghost episode that Caffrey and I did, kind of breaking down those 3 roles within the Dark Tower universe. But yeah, we usually do one about every other month. So hopefully before the end of the year, stay tuned.
Would definitely like to do one in concert with the Dark Tower next month. So we'll have to brainstorm some ideas. And as for Losers Club, we've got a lot of fun stuff this month. We've got a long watch on The Mist coming out, which is excellent. And then we're going to be doing another archives episode in the Patreon on the year 1977, the year that the Roland and Company visit Stephen King. And we're going to be reading uncollected, unpublished, well, not unpublished, but uncollected rare stories, as well as essays that he wrote during that time. So to get a kind of interview in the mindset of where he was at. So this was fun, y'all. We did it. One more book left. let's roll. Long days
and
pleasant nights.
I got some hot friends. God, I got some hot friends. I got some hot friends. God, I got some hot friends. But you know you want somebody to treat you good.
This is the end of our show. For now. We hope you enjoyed this production. If you like our programming, consider searching for other bloody disgusting podcasts, such as Creepy, Horror Queers, The Boo Crew, SCP Archives, Nightlight, Margaret's Garden, and more.